Chapter 1457, You Guys Kill Yourselves. Chapter 1457, You Guys Kill Yourselves? What's going on? Could Desolate Marshal truly be someone blessed with great fortune? That's right. He fought and injured so many experts beneath Enigma Palace, and yet, the mystical guardian beast refuses to kill him? When the cultivators of Enigma Palace saw that, they started discussing excitedly. Palace Lord, let's invite the Patriarch back. Half-Marshal Ancestor Li Heng had a grim expression as he sent a voice transmission with his spirit consciousness. That's the only way. Half-Marshal Ancestor Qing Zhe nodded. Clang. Clang. On the other side, the moment Yen Beichen broke free, he charged towards Heavenly Secrets with the Hatred Fiend Saber. Heavenly Secrets was the only one in his eyes. Heavenly Secrets had a calm expression and did not fight Yen Beichen head-on. He retreated with the Mystic Firmament steps. Swoosh. At the same time, Su Zimo opened his dermic-breaking bow once more and condensed a dermic power arrow. It tore through the air and sealed Heavenly Secrets' escape path instantly. Heavenly Secrets' expression finally changed. Desolate Marshal and the Asura were the two strongest monster incarnates in the current era. Even if he had heaven-defying methods, he could not defend against them. Poof. Although Heavenly Secrets' footsteps were mysterious, his shoulder was still pierced by the dermic power arrow and his entire arm exploded into a blood mist. The Asura slashed down head-on. Heavenly Secrets dodged with all his might, but a bloodied wound appeared on his chest by the Hatred Fiend's saber. His flesh was overturned and his bones could be seen. Ugh. He grit his teeth and grunted dully, breaking out in cold sweat from the pain. Heavenly Secrets channeled his dermic powers, and in the blink of an eye, his severed arm grew once more. However, the wound on his chest was still bleeding endlessly. The Hatred Fiend saber contained an extremely terrifying fiend chi of hatred, and even the smallest wound was extremely difficult to heal. Heavenly Secrets' blood chi was severely depleted. He retreated continuously with a scarlet glint in his eyes. He could barely hold it in any longer. Kill? Right then, Half-Marshal Ancestor Chen Tian and Half-Marshal Ancestor Divine Turtledove charged forward once more. One of them blocked the Asura while the other charged towards Su Zimo. Humph. The Asura slashed in reverse. The Hatred Fiend Chi and Asura Fiend Chi burst forth instantly and sent Half-Marshal Ancestor Divine Turtledove flying. Half-Marshal Ancestor Divine Turtledove spat out blood with a dispirited expression. A blood glint shone in the depths of his eyes as well. Clang. Su Zimo drew his dermic-breaking bow and fired another arrow. Although that arrow was blocked by the dermic weapon of Half-Marshal Ancestor Chen Tian, it could not defend against the terrifying power contained in the arrow. As though he was struck by lightning, the dermic weapon left his hands and the flesh on his arms exploded. His body swayed and he nearly fell from midair. The two Half-Marshal Ancestors could not defend against Su Zimo and Yen Beichen's killing power at all. In the blink of an eye, Heavenly Secrets was exposed before Su Zimo and Yen Beichen once more. The blood glint in Heavenly Secrets' eyes gradually appeared and could no longer be concealed. If he did not use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, he might die here. When he saw that, Su Zimo's expression was cold as he drew the dermic-breaking bow once more. He was forcing Heavenly Secrets to use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra because he wanted all the cultivators of Enigma Palace to witness his true colors. Buzz. The bow quivered. A dermic power arrow tore through the air and arrived before Heavenly Secrets instantly. Heavenly Secrets' eyes shone brightly with a blood glint. Suddenly, as though he sensed something, the blood glint in his eyes retracted rapidly. How dare you? An authoritative roar sounded. Immediately after, a gigantic crack appeared in the void beside Heavenly Secrets. It was dark and cold as a palm extended from within and gripped the dermic power arrow. Bang. That indestructible dermic power arrow was crushed by a bare-handed palm. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Right then, a figure walked out slowly from the gigantic crack. With a scrawny face and a slender figure, he wore a Daoist robe and strode out with hands behind his back. It was only when that person walked out from the crack that the pitch-black crack gradually closed. This method definitely surpassed the strength of a conjoint body or even a half-martial ancestor. A Mahayana Patriarch. For example, the reason why the 9 immortal sects, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries were called super sects was not only because they had ancient inheritances and strong foundations. More than that, it was because those sects had Mahayana patriarchs backing them. Furthermore, they had more than one. In fact, some of the super sects even had emperors. However, these Mahayana patriarchs almost never revealed themselves and rarely appeared in the cultivation world. Even if anything major happened in the sect, Mahayana patriarchs would not appear. In the eyes of a Mahayana patriarch, there was only one thing that was important: to become an emperor. Everything else was insignificant. Furthermore, now that they were at the Mahayana realm, they were no longer bothered about most secular things in the cultivation world. The birth of a paragon and monster incarnate was nothing in the eyes of a Mahayana patriarch. Throughout history, there had been way too many cultivators who became paragons and monster incarnates. However, there were extremely few who could truly advance to the Mahayana realm. One would only be qualified to converse with them side by side after advancing to the Mahayana realm. Therefore, Mahayana patriarchs would only come out of seclusion if their sects met with a calamity or danger of annihilation. Initially, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe thought that he could suppress Su Zimo and the others completely with his methods. To think that the situation would develop to such an extent. Left with no other choice, he could only send a message to invite the patriarch of the sect back. Greetings, Patriarch Qing Cheng. When half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng and the others saw the skinny cultivator, they bowed and shouted. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe was the descendant of Patriarch Qing Cheng. Although the difference between them was only a single cultivation realm, Patriarch Qing Cheng was countless years older than half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe. The Patriarch has appeared. That's a Mahayana patriarch. I've never seen one ever since I joined Enigma Palace. The cultivators of Enigma Palace were shocked. What's going on? Patriarch Qing Cheng surveyed his surroundings and swept his gaze across the battlefield, asking slowly with a cold glint in his eyes. Patriarch. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe said hurriedly. Desolate Marshal and the others charged into Enigma Palace and declared that they wanted to kill our young master. Furthermore, they destroyed the steel of the mountain gate and killed a few mighty figures of Enigma Palace while injuring many half-martial ancestors. This desolate Marshal is lawless and even snatched my dermic-breaking bow. The gaze of the half-martial ancestor of Qing Zhe shifted slowly, pausing on demonist Ji Mingzhen and Yen Beichen for a moment before landing on Su Zimo. Su Zimo's hair stood on end instantly. It was as though a calamity was about to descend upon him the next moment. This was a Mahayana patriarch who had comprehended divine powers. There was a world of a difference between him and a half-martial ancestor who had only comprehended a trace of divine powers. If Patriarch Qing Cheng wanted to kill him, even his green lotus true body would not be able to defend against it. You sure are bold to kill cultivators of Enigma Palace. Patriarch Qing Cheng said slowly, expressionlessly. There's another reason for this. Su Zimo took a deep breath of air and withstood the might of the patriarch, saying in a deep voice, "We're not here because we want to be enemies with Enigma Palace." I don't want to hear you explain. Patriarch Qing Cheng shook his head and said indifferently, "You guys kill yourselves." Chapter 1458 Storyteller. Chapter 1458 Storyteller. The words of a Mahayana patriarch exuded an unquestionable power. It was as though asking Su Zimo and the others to commit suicide was giving them a dignified death. To be fair, Patriarch Qing Cheng was not bothered to attack. Although these people were monster incarnates of history in his eyes, they were nothing but ants. Kill myself. Su Zimo smiled. To think that even a Mahayana patriarch of Enigma Palace would be so biased and oblivious to the truth. Even against a Mahayana patriarch, Su Zimo did not retreat at all and revealed his sharpness. Su Zimo's gaze was dark as he said slowly, "If I kill myself here today, I'll definitely make a comeback in the future. At that time, I'll see who from Enigma Palace can stop me." This was not a threat. Even if his green lotus true body died here, he still had two true bodies. The dragon true body had the backing of the dragon race and divine Phoenix Island. By the time Su Zimo made a comeback, even Enigma Palace might not be able to stop him. Patriarch, Desolate Marshal has another clone in the dragon race and his status is extremely high. He should be the young master of the dragon race, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe said hurriedly. Oh. Patriarch Qing Cheng frowned. That was a little troublesome. Even if Su Zimo was backed by the other super sects, Patriarch Qing Cheng would kill him without any qualms. However, if it was the dragon race, one of the primordial races, he would have to reconsider. After a moment of silence, Patriarch Qing Cheng said indifferently, I can let you leave, but the three of them still have to die. I don't care what super sects you guys are from. Since you guys fought in front of Enigma Palace, you have to accept punishment. Patriarch Qing Cheng had long seen through the cultivation techniques of Yan Beichen, Ming Zhen and Demoness Ji and naturally knew where they came from. But today he had to kill to establish his dominance. Otherwise, the might of Enigma Palace would be gone. You can't kill the three of them either. Su Zimo did not yield at all and glared at Patriarch Qing Cheng still, saying in a deep voice. In that short period of time, Half-Martial Ancestor Qing Zhe had already sent a lot of information about Desolate Martial to Patriarch Qing Cheng secretly. Desolate Martial, don't push your luck. Patriarch Qing Cheng sneered, even if I don't kill you, you won't be able to live for long either. You'll suffer from the killing badges of the primordial races. The three of you, aren't you going to kill yourselves? Are you waiting for me to make a move personally? Patriarch Qing Cheng ignored Su Zimo and looked at Yan Beichen and the other two, asking indifferently. Yan Beichen's expression was cold as he channeled all the strength in his body and held the Hatred Fiend saber horizontally across his chest. He looked at Patriarch Qing Cheng and released a torrential fiend chi from head to toe. Anyone who stopped him from killing heavenly secrets would be his enemy. Even against a Mahayana Patriarch, Yan Beichen dared to raise his saber. However, under the power of a Mahayana Patriarch, even the simple act of raising the Hatred Fiend saber seemed to have exhausted all his strength. There was no way he could fight against Patriarch Qing Cheng. Fu. Patriarch Qing Cheng smiled indifferently. The monster incarnate of this generation sure has some guts. To think that he would dare to raise his saber in front of me. That's good as well. I'll send you to hell so that you can meet that fiend Emperor Hatred. The gaze of Patriarch Qing Cheng intensified as he suddenly reached out and grabbed towards Yan Beichen. Ah. When he saw that, Su Zimo reared his head and howled into the skies. Circulating his blood chi to its limits, he broke free from the might of a Mahayana Patriarch and drew his dermic breaking bow once more, condensing a dermic power arrow that was aimed at Patriarch Qing Cheng. Yan Beichen was extremely important to Su Zimo. He had once watched Su Hong leave him helplessly. He would definitely not let that scene happen before him again. Swoosh. The dermic power arrow tore through the air and shot towards Patriarch Qing Cheng, arriving instantly. The cultivators were shocked. Wasn't Desolate Martial way too bold? Yan Beichen cultivated the Hatred Sutra and was unable to extricate himself from the hatred. Even though he lost his rationality completely, he merely raised his saber horizontally in front of Patriarch Qing Cheng. However, Desolate Martial actually dared to attack a Mahayana Patriarch. The dermic power arrow was extremely fast. Even Patriarch Qing Cheng did not seem to be able to react and did not dodge or defend. He merely turned around slowly and glanced at the dermic power arrow. Boom. The dermic power arrow exploded instantly and dissipated into emptiness, vanishing. With a single glance, that indestructible dermic power arrow exploded. This was the means of a Mahayana Patriarch. This was the power of the Mahayana realm. It was a complete suppression. Patriarch Qing Cheng had a dark expression as he looked at Su Zimo with a chilling gaze. Desolate Martial, you must be tired of living. You're disrespecting me? Do you really think I won't dare to kill you? The enmity and attention of Patriarch Qing Cheng was shifted towards Su Zimo completely after that arrow as a tremendous might enveloped the latter. Against that might, the Green Lotus true body creaked and his bones felt like they were about to fall apart. Brother Yen, all of you run. Although Su Zimo was expressionless, he sent a voice transmission secretly with his spirit consciousness in a hurried tone. Don't worry about me. I have true bodies elsewhere and I won't die. Fu. Patriarch Qing Cheng laughed mockingly. None of you will be able to leave today. He glared at Su Zimo with a cruel expression. Patriarch Qing Cheng could even hear Su Zimo's spirit consciousness transmission. I can spare your life since you're backed by the dragon race. However, I have to teach you a lesson. He looked at Su Zimo and said indifferently, your cultivation will be crippled today. Before his sentence was finished, Patriarch Qing Cheng patted Su Zimo gently through the void. Swoosh. Although that action was casual, a terrifying gigantic palm appeared in midair and crushed down towards Su Zimo. Before the gigantic palm descended, Su Zimo's body trembled continuously and his 7 orifices bled under the immense pressure. If the cultivation of the Green Lotus true body was crippled, it would be no different from killing him. Suddenly, without any warning, a figure appeared in front of Su Zimo. It was an old man with a Confucian crown on his head and long robes. He had 3 long whiskers on his face and did not have any immortal aura. Instead, he looked like an ordinary person that roamed around the mortal world. Who wants to cripple his cultivation? The old man with the Confucian crown harumphed gently and asked. That single harumph caused the terrifying palm in midair to dissipate and vanish instantly. Storyteller. When Su Zimo saw the old man, his heart skipped a beat. Although it was only a back view, he recognized him right away. This old man was the storyteller on the streets of the marketplace and forced back a divine dragon outside the capital of Great Zhou. The moment the storyteller appeared, 3 figures leaped out from the divine dragon laying dormant at the side and shouted as well. Old man, you're finally back. I've missed you so much. After a long time, Lin Xuanji dashed over with reddened eyes and tears streaming down his face. Little Fatty and Shi Jian followed behind and stumbled over. Chapter 1459, Bow of the Patriarch. Chapter 1459, Bow of the Patriarch. Lin Xuanji's tears were earth-shaking, and those who did not know better would have thought that something bad had happened. The storyteller's face darkened. The moment Lin Xuanji arrived, he raised his leg and kicked the ladder back. This action did not have the slightest bit of the demeanor of an expert, and it was like a fight between mortals in the marketplace. No matter what, there was nothing strange about the storyteller. That kick gave little Fatty and Shi Jian a shock. Fuck. Lin Xuanji staggered from the kick and nearly fell from midair. He could not help but grumble, Old man, why did you kick me? Stop pretending. The storyteller pouted his lips. He had completely seen through Lin Xuanji's poor acting skills. With an embarrassed expression, Lin Xuanji wiped away the tear droplets on his face and coughed gently. Although those tears were fake, my longing for you truly extends to the depths of heaven and earth. The storyteller sneered and glanced askance at Lin Xuanji, saying in disdain, without even having to divine, I can tell from your sorry state that you were set up by others just by thinking with my bum. Little Fatty and Shi Jian were dumbfounded at the sight. This old man truly has no boundaries with his words, and he's even more incredible than Lin Xuanji. He compared his brains to his bum? That's the help that Lin Xuanji sought for? No matter how I look at it, he doesn't seem like an expert. The two of them exchanged glances and muttered internally. Look at you. The storyteller did not seem like he was going to let things go as he scolded. You must have forgotten everything I taught you. The only thing you know to do when you're bullied is to ask me to come back and clean up your mess. I even feel ashamed for you. No matter how thick Lin Xuanji's skin was, he could not withstand the lecture of the storyteller, and his face flushed red. Old man, stop it. The veins on Lin Xuanji's neck popped out as he could not help but argue. I've been locked up for many years and had no intention of asking you for help. If this matter wasn't so serious, I wouldn't have called you back. My, how dare you talk back? As though he had not heard Lin Xuanji mention that something serious was going on, the storyteller mocked instead, you sure are a fucking embarrassment to be locked up by others for many years. Fuck. Lin Xuanji was at a loss and his face turned purple, wanting nothing more than to dig a hole and hide in it. None of the cultivators present dared to interrupt. This old man did not look decent at all. However, everyone could clearly see that when the old man appeared, he merely harumphed casually and blocked the attack of Patriarch Qing Cheng. Furthermore, although the old man was spouting nonsense, Patriarch Qing Cheng did not express anything. Naturally, nobody would jump out foolishly instead. Initially, there was a tense situation in front of Enigma Palace. After the storyteller appeared, the tension in the air eased significantly as he scolded Lin Xuanji continuously with a spectrum of terms. Lin Xuanji frowned and shivered in anger. He did not even dare to retort now. Every single sentence he refuted was met by 10 replies from the storyteller. At the side, Demoness G covered her mouth and chuckled. She could not take it anymore and smiled. Senior, there's so many people watching. Give him some face. Demoness G's words were also a reminder for the storyteller to settle the situation before him. The storyteller harumphed and said reluctantly, since Founder Master Ling Long's successor is pleading for mercy, I'll let you off temporarily this time round. Oh, my dear benefactor. Lin Xuanji felt as though he had been pardoned. This time round he was truly moved to tears as tears streamed down his face. He wanted nothing more than to run to Demoness G and kowtow to her. Su Zimo heaved a sigh of relief as well. In that short period of time, his head throbbed in pain. Greetings, Senior. I'm Desolate Marshal. Su Zimo hurried before the storyteller and bowed. Fufu, we meet again. Earlier on, the storyteller had a disdainful expression towards Lin Xuanji. However, in the blink of an eye, his expression changed as he nodded towards Su Zimo with a pleasant expression. Creak, creak. Lin Xuanji clenched his fists and ground his teeth in anger. The attitude of the storyteller towards Su Zimo caused the hearts of everyone from Enigma Palace to skip a beat. Half-Martial Ancestor Chen Tian and Half-Martial Ancestor Divine Turtle Dove had ugly expressions and looked at Heavenly Secrets instinctively. Heavenly Secrets was expressionless. Right then, Patriarch Qing Cheng advanced and bowed to the storyteller, causing an uproar. Not many cultivators of Enigma Palace knew of the storyteller's identity, let alone outsiders. But now that even Patriarch Qing Cheng had to bow down, just who was this storyteller? Or rather, what was his cultivation realm? Could he be an emperor? Su Zimo was secretly alarmed as well. He had met the storyteller twice, but he did not expect the latter to have such a powerful background. Greetings. The moment Patriarch Qing Cheng spoke, the storyteller waved it off and interrupted, Rise. The old storyteller had a disdainful expression towards Lin Xuanji and was delighted towards Su Zimo. Now that he turned to face Patriarch Qing Cheng, he had a new expression again. You were the one who wanted to cripple his cultivation earlier on? The storyteller asked indifferently with a calm tone, and no one could guess his emotions. Yes. In front of the storyteller, Patriarch Qing Cheng clearly became a little cautious and no longer had his dominance from earlier on. This Desolate Marshal fought in front of Enigma Palace. You know that he's Desolate Marshal? Before he could finish, he was interrupted by the storyteller's question. Although Patriarch Qing Cheng was interrupted twice in a row, there was no displeasure on his face. I know. Patriarch Qing Cheng replied honestly. I don't care what Desolate Marshal did in front of Enigma Palace. The storyteller said slowly, he once established the martial Dao and imparted martial arts to all living beings, allowing everyone in the world to cultivate and bring blessings to the world. Aren't you afraid of divine retribution for crippling someone with such merit? The storyteller's tone turned increasingly stern, and towards the end, he was already lecturing. Patriarch Qing Cheng lowered his head slightly with a terrible expression. He was different from Lin Xuanji. He was a Mahayana patriarch after all. It was truly embarrassing for him to be scolded like this in public. Actually, it's not Patriarch Qing Cheng's fault. The Palace Lord of Enigma Palace could not help but say, Desolate Marshal and the others have truly gone too far. They arrived at the entrance of Enigma Palace and destroyed the stele with the human emperor's handwriting, killing a few mighty figures and injuring many half-martial ancestors. They even declared that they wanted to kill our young master of Enigma Palace. If Patriarch Qing Cheng did not attack and allowed Desolate Marshal and the others to charge into Enigma Palace, they would probably start a massacre given their natures. Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian added hurriedly, The Palace Lord is right. Patriarch Qing Cheng already gave Desolate Marshal a chance for him to retreat, but he still pushed his luck. The Patriarch had no choice but to cripple his cultivation. Nonsense, we're not here to make Enigma Palace our enemy. We're only here to settle scores with Heavenly Secrets. Demonish Ji hollered. Heavenly Secrets is our young master of Enigma Palace. He's not someone you can provoke casually. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe sneered. The young master of Enigma Palace. The storyteller raised his brow and shifted his gaze slowly towards Heavenly Secrets, asking faintly, When did you become the young master of Enigma Palace? Chapter 1460 Blade Wielder. Chapter 1460, Blade Wielder. Heavenly Secrets had a calm expression as he bowed respectfully and said in a deep voice, Master, a few years ago the god, which and other primordial races sought me out and asked me to divine the location of the primordial taboo. Su Zimo frowned slightly. To think that Heavenly Secrets was the disciple of the storyteller. Heavenly Secrets and Xuanji, from that perspective, the two of them should be fellow disciples. Heavenly Secrets continued, I was worried that the taboo would grow and wreak havoc in Tianhuang mainland, so I agreed to help and divine the location of the taboo. However, this matter was stopped by junior brother Xuanji. Junior brother Xuanji is on good terms with Desolate Marshal and the primordial taboo is the latter's spirit beast. I can understand why junior brother Xuanji would object to it. However, Enigma Palace is concerned about the masses and can't prioritize personal relationships. As such, I reported this to the palace lord and the other elders for them to make a decision. When he heard that, Lin Xuanji could not help but stifle a chuckle and mock. The primordial races were the ones who wreaked havoc in Tianhuang mainland back then. Why are you still working with them? Why don't you go and kill them instead? Junior brother, I know that you harbor resentment, but I'm not to blame for imprisoning you. Heavenly Secrets said indifferently with a calm expression. At that moment, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe coughed gently. At that time, I discussed with the elders and indeed, the threat of the taboo was greater. Therefore, I asked Heavenly Secrets to join forces with the primordial races to eliminate that hoe for the time being. Since Lin Xuanji was insistent on objecting, we imprisoned him temporarily and allowed Heavenly Secrets to become the young master so that he can interact with the primordial races and plan this matter. The establishment of the young master is in line with the palace rules and was decided through a discussion between the elders of the palace. Yes. The storyteller nodded, still expressionless. Very well, there doesn't seem to be any problem. After a brief pause, he shifted his gaze towards Heavenly Secrets and asked indifferently, however, what's up with the blood refinement fiend sutra that you're cultivating? Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Many gazes landed on Heavenly Secrets instantly. Many cultivators were shocked. Earlier on, they did not take Su Zimo's words seriously at all. But now that the storyteller said that, there could be no mistake. The young master of Enigma Palace had cultivated the blood refinement fiend sutra. Even half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng and the others looked at Heavenly Secrets in disbelief and frowned. Among everyone, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove did not have much of a reaction. Instead, there was a hint of panic in their eyes. Heavenly Secrets, did you really cultivate that fiend technique? Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe asked. Heavenly Secrets had a calm expression. He had expected that he could not hide it from the storyteller. He said frankly, I did cultivate the blood refinement fiend sutra, but I don't think there's anything wrong with this cultivation technique. Desolate Martial cultivated this fiend technique as well, but he still established the martial Dao to impart martial arts to all living beings all the same. That's right. The storyteller nodded. There's indeed nothing wrong with a fiend technique. The key lies in the people who cultivated it. When Desolate Martial cultivated it, he saved countless humans in Myriad Phenomenon City. What is your purpose for cultivating it? Master, I didn't use it to do anything outrageous. Heavenly Secrets displayed a strong mental fortitude against the storyteller's question and explained in a deep voice without any panic. You're involved in Qin Pianran's death, right? The storyteller asked indifferently. At the mention of that, the hatred fiend Qi around Yen Beichen intensified and his eyes shone with endless killing intent. Master Ming Jian, Dao Lord Immortal Sword has some personal ties with me. I couldn't reject his request to help. Heavenly Secrets replied, furthermore, I only divined Qin Pianran's location. I did not lay my hands on her the entire time, let alone know that Dao Lord Immortal Sword would kill her. Of course you knew. The storyteller said, moreover you knew in your heart that with Qin Pianran's death, Yen Beichen will definitely turn into a fiend and become this generation's fiend Emperor Hatred. Your target was not Qin Pianran the entire time, but Yen Beichen. You wanted the birth of a true Asura so that he could be the first blade in your hands. Yen Beichen was stunned and his expression changed indeterminately. From time to time, he would frown and his features would contort, as though he was in immense pain. So, right from the beginning he was someone else's chess piece. Pianran's death was entirely because of him. His fate was not in his control at all. Heavenly Secrets was silent. The storyteller continued, the so-called worry of the taboo wreaking havoc in Tianhuang mainland was merely an excuse. After all, the taboo would become the second blade in your hands. You merely had a single motive for capturing Night Spirit instead of killing it. You wanted to lure out your third blade, Desolate Martial. Your fourth blade was the major sects and factions of the cultivation world. Your fifth blade was the primordial races. The storyteller said slowly, and you, Heavenly Secrets, are the blade wielder behind this. All you had to do was gather the 5 blades at Heaven and Earth Valley to create a wanton massacre. At that time Heaven and Earth Valley would be filled with mountains of corpses and rivers of blood. No matter which blade was snapped, it won't affect you at all. That's because you'll already be the biggest winner and Heaven and Earth Valley would become the best place for you to cultivate the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Those words were earth-shaking. The cultivators were dumbfounded in shock. Even demonist Ji Mingzhen and Lin Xuanji were astounded with widened eyes. Although they had heard about the battle at Heaven and Earth Valley, they did not know that there was a blade wielder manipulating everyone's fates behind the scenes. Even Desolate Marshal was his chess piece. Su Zimo sighed internally. Initially he had the same speculation, but he was still unsure about many things. Now that the storyteller had explained it so clearly, he truly understood the entire situation. Heavenly Secrets was indeed terrifying. If not for Monk Daming, Su Zimo would have been a chess piece abandoned and sacrificed by Heavenly Secrets. What great expense you went through. The storyteller nodded as well and sighed. Even though the storyteller explained everything, Heavenly Secrets still smiled indifferently without any panic in his eyes. He was frighteningly calm. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently. Master, you're wrong. I didn't refine a single drop of Heaven and Earth Valley's bloodline. That's right. At the mention of this, the storyteller shook his head as well and lamented, Man proposes but God disposes. You've planned everything, but you never expected that you would become the sixth blade in the hands of others. Those words pierced into Heavenly Secrets' chest like a thorn. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had planned flawlessly and had never made such a huge mistake. The smile on Heavenly Secrets' face gradually vanished. It was only at that moment that a hint of anger and indignance flashed through his eyes. However, they vanished without a trace in the blink of an eye. In Chinese, his name is Tianji. Chapter 1461, A Chance. Chapter 1461, A Chance. Suddenly Heavenly Secrets smiled. Master, at the end of the day, all of this is just your speculation. You can't possibly want to punish me just because of some guesses, right? Very good. As expected of my disciple. The storyteller nodded with a mocking expression. Su Zimo frowned slightly as well. Heavenly Secrets was not wrong. Although what the storyteller said was the truth, it was only his speculation after all. If he wanted to punish Heavenly Secrets in front of everyone just because of some guesses, it would truly be unconvincing. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently. I didn't kill anyone during the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. My hands were clean. Although Heavenly Secrets was defeated, it was not to the extent of a complete defeat. As he had said, even if he set up such a huge scheme and plotted against everyone, his hands were not tainted by a single drop of blood. Master, I have nothing to say if you want to punish me. However, I'm indignant if it's just based on your speculation. Heavenly Secrets bowed deeply to the storyteller and said nothing more. I did not harm anyone. If I'm punished, I'm sure the cultivators of the sect will be disheartened by this outcome as well. That's right, it's not entirely Heavenly Secrets' fault for joining forces with the primordial races as well. It was also an outcome decided after a discussion between us elders. Elder Qian Tian and Elder Divine Turtledove stood out to plead for mercy for Heavenly Secrets. Su Zimo sighed internally. This was indeed a problem for the storyteller. After all, there was a master-disciple relationship between the two of them. Even the storyteller would not be able to bear the thought of punishing him with some mere guesses. The storyteller gazed into the distance and remained silent for a long time before saying slowly, Naturally, I'm not going to punish you for your crimes. Heavenly Secrets smirked as though he had expected this outcome. He knew his master way too well. The fact that he dared to do such a thing meant that he had predicted everything. Even the storyteller was part of his plans. After a brief pause, the storyteller changed the topic. However, I've once told you guys that as disciples of Enigma Palace, you should not get embroiled in the strife of the cultivation world. If you get into trouble, settle it yourself. I won't help you. I wouldn't dare to forget your teachings, Master. Heavenly Secrets replied respectfully in a deep voice. Since you've caused trouble today, go and settle it yourself. No one from Enigma Palace is to interfere. The storyteller said indifferently. Su Zimo was stunned. Although the storyteller took into account their relationship as master and disciple, he did not express favoritism. Instead, he gave Heavenly Secrets a chance. Of course, it was also a chance for Yen Beichen. Asura, what do you think? The storyteller asked. Thank you for granting my wish, Senior. Yen Beichen's voice was cold and his eyes shone fiercely. On the other hand, Heavenly Secrets was extremely calm as he said in a deep voice, Master, I seek a fair opportunity. This will be a one-on-one fight. Whether or not it is to the death, no one is allowed to interfere. Heavenly Secrets' words were also a reminder for Su Zimo and the others to not help. Don't worry, I won't punish you if you can survive the Asura's saber. However, I won't save you if you encounter danger either. The Storyteller said, this battle will end the grudges. It doesn't matter who the victor is, you will fight to the death. All right. Heavenly Secrets smiled gently and agreed readily without any fear in his eyes. As though he recalled something, Su Zimo frowned slightly and hesitated to speak. However, on second thought, even if he said it, Yen Beichen would not care given his personality. After all, he had waited for this moment for far too long. Although Su Zimo looked worried, he still retreated with Ming Zhen and Demoness Ji. Everyone from Enigma Palace retreated as well. In the blink of an eye, an empty space appeared in midair where Yen Beichen and Heavenly Secrets stood facing each other. Asura, I know that Qin Pianran's death is heartbreaking for you and you can't let go. Heavenly Secrets said, right now, every single day you live is a torture for you. You can't wait to commit suicide to reunite with Qin Pianran, right? Heavenly Secrets' eyes shone with a strange glint. Even his tone turned gentle, causing one to trust him from the depths of their hearts and lower their guard. Yen Beichen frowned and lowered his head slightly, as though he was reminiscing about the past and was in pain and self-blame. What a brilliant, bewitching technique. Demoness Ji frowned slightly and murmured. She knew that Dermic art the best. However, to think that Heavenly Secrets' attainments in bewitchment were not weaker than hers. There were all sorts of things in the Mystic Firmament record. As the disciple of the Storyteller, Heavenly Secrets had shocking talent and a wide knowledge of things. Nobody knew how strong Heavenly Secrets was because he rarely attacked. Up till this point of his cultivation, if Heavenly Secrets wanted to do something, he did not even have to do it personally. All he had to do was set up a trap with ease and everything would naturally be resolved. Both parties looked to be facing one another motionlessly. However, Heavenly Secrets had already attacked. Since you're in so much pain, how about letting me send you off? Heavenly Secrets continued to bewitch Yen Beichen and said gently, give up, I'm helping you. As long as you die, you can reunite with Qin Pianran. Qin Pianran is waiting for you down there. Can't you feel her? Yen Beichen's body trembled even more violently and his features were contorted. What should we do? The Asura can't hold on for much longer. Demoness Ji had a worried expression. If he can't break free from Heavenly Secrets' bewitchment, the Asura will probably commit suicide on the spot without Heavenly Secrets even making a move. No. Su Zimo shook his head slowly. Brother Yen cultivated the Hatred Sutra and the hatred in his heart has already surpassed everything. If he thinks that he can bewitch Brother Yen with that bewitchment technique, Heavenly Secrets is underestimating both Brother Yen and the Hatred Sutra. Right then Yen Beichen's body gradually stopped trembling and calmed down. What's wrong? Have you made a decision? Heavenly Secrets walked slowly towards Yen Beichen and asked carefully and gently. Suddenly Yen Beichen raised his head. His eyes were pitch black like ink, resembling two gigantic black holes that could devour everything. Heavenly Secrets was alarmed when he saw the pair of eyes. I am indeed in pain and I've let Pianran down. Yen Beichen said slowly, however, even if I commit suicide, I have to kill you first. Without you, Pianran wouldn't have died at all. Heavenly Secrets, you deserve to die. Buzz. Before his sentence was finished, Yen Beichen swung the Hatred Fiend's saber in his hands and slashed towards Heavenly Secrets through the void. That slash did not only contain the endless hatred of the Hatred Sutra, but also the torrential killing intent of the Asura Sutra. The saber intent of the two fiend techniques fused together against that slash. This was the strongest slash that Yen Beichen had released since he started cultivating. Even Su Zimo, who was watching from afar, felt his scalp tingle and was secretly speechless when he saw the burst of that slash. The Hatred Fiend's saber streaked through the air. A black streak of light descended on Heavenly Secrets' head with hatred and killing intent, as though it wanted to destroy everything. Chapter 1462 Dead Heavenly Secrets? Chapter 1462 Dead Heavenly Secrets. That slash was so terrifying that even Su Zimo might not be able to withstand it. Heavenly Secrets retracted his smile with a grim expression. He had not expected that his bewitchment would force out the most terrifying Asura. Slapping his storage bag with his left hand, Heavenly Secrets took out a protection talisman and tore it apart instantly, forming a defensive barrier around him. At the same time he changed his hand seals repeatedly. Mystic Firmament Dermic Robe. Mystic Firmament Mirror. Suddenly, a set of clothes that flowed with dermic powers appeared on Heavenly Secrets' body and shone with a mysterious glow. An ancient mirror appeared in his right hand and blocked the black light that descended from midair. In the blink of an eye, Heavenly Secrets released 3 defensive methods. Snap. The Mystic Firmament Mirror was the first to shatter. Under normal circumstances, this Mystic Firmament Mirror could reflect attacks. However, the power of Yenbeichen's slash was way too terrifying. The saber intent that was fused with the 2 fiend techniques of the Hatred Sutra and Asura Sutra was something that even the Mystic Firmament Mirror could not defend against and shattered instantly. Right after was the defensive barrier formed by the protection talisman. The true form of the Hatred Fiend saber did not even manage to slash the barrier. The black light that burst forth was enough to slice the barrier into 2. Boom. Thereafter, a loud bang sounded when the black light struck the Mystic Firmament Dermic Robe heavily. The Mystic Firmament Dermic powers shattered and the true form of the Hatred Fiend saber appeared. However, that slash did not slice Heavenly Secrets into 2. Instead, it met with immense resistance. Bang. Heavenly Secrets smashed heavily onto the ground, but he struggled to stand up before long. He was covered in dust and his face was pale as blood oozed from the corner of his mouth. Heavenly Secrets' robes were already torn by the Hatred Fiend saber and his inner armor was exposed. This was a defensive Khanate mighty figure dermic weapon and was extremely precious. Previously, Heavenly Secrets suffered a loss at Heaven and Earth Valley. Ever since he returned, he wore this inner armor. Today it saved his life. In order to defend against the Asura's slash, Heavenly Secrets had to use 4 defensive methods. Crack, crack, crack. Right then, a jarring sound echoed from the inner armor. Heavenly Secrets lowered his head. A crack appeared on the inner armor and split it into 2. The light of the inner armor dimmed rapidly. Swoosh. The inner armor fell off from Heavenly Secrets and was completely crippled. The crowd fell into an uproar. That slash destroyed a Khanate mighty figure dermic weapon. Well. Heavenly Secrets nodded slowly. As expected of the weapon of the Fiend Emperor Hatred. To think that it would possess such sharpness even after being sealed for so many years. However, Asura, can you still release a saber intent as such? Heavenly Secrets sneered. The combination of the 2 saber intents was not inferior to the thousands of heaven-slaying sword chi that Su Zimo released instantly. It took a huge toll on his essence spirit. It was impossible for him to release a second slash within a short period of time. Heavenly Secrets had long seen through Yenbeichen's facade and smiled. Asura, you won't be able to hold on for much longer. That slash had already expended everything you have. When Yenbeichen arrived before Enigma Palace, he was trapped in the exquisite killing formation and nearly died. By the time he came out, he was already covered in injuries. However, he did not recuperate at all and fought against Heavenly Secrets with his injured body. Up till this point of the battle, his injuries had worsened. The only thing that kept him on was a strong determination and hatred. Of course, Heavenly Secrets' situation was also terrible. Yenbeichen pursed his lips without saying anything and continued charging over. His footsteps were already staggered, but his gaze was fixed on Heavenly Secrets without shifting at all. Heavenly Secrets held his folding fan. The 2 of them fought once more. Blood splattered everywhere as the figures intertwined. Yenbeichen was fighting with his life and wanted to kill Heavenly Secrets even at the risk of being severely injured. This method of fighting restricted Heavenly Secrets. His folding fan smashed towards Yenbeichen's head. However, Yenbeichen did not even look or defend. Instead, he slashed in reverse towards Heavenly Secrets' glabella. In less than a dozen breaths, Yenbeichen gained the advantage once more. However, the 2 of them had expended too much of their stamina, dermic powers and blood chi up till this point of the battle and were left with almost nothing. This battle was no longer just about technique and strength. Instead, it was a competition of psychology and willpower. Nobody knew who the eventual victor would be until the final moment. The 2 figures crossed once more. Heavenly Secrets' folding fan smashed Yenbeichen's arm. Yenbeichen's Hatred Fiend saber sliced a gigantic wound on Heavenly Secrets' chest with fresh blood. Heavenly Secrets' expression was already extremely terrible. The wound caused by the Hatred Fiend saber was extremely difficult to heal. Furthermore, It possessed the hatred fiend Qi and was destroying his body continuously. If this continued, there was a high chance he would fall first. Gripping the hatred fiend saber in his right hand, Yan Beichen used it as a walking stick and limped towards Heavenly Secrets. His other arm was slumped at his side, his bones broken. He no longer had any dermic powers in his body. It was impossible to repair that broken arm. Even so, the hatred and killing intent in Yan Beichen's eyes did not change at all right from the beginning. That gaze made Heavenly Secrets panic. Finally, he could not hold it in any longer. This was also his final trump card. The Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Before the battle, he had specially requested from the Storyteller a fair fight without anyone interfering. The moment he made that request, he was already prepared to use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Even if he channeled that fiend technique, no one could interfere. Although not many people died before Enigma Palace, the refinement of that bloodline was enough for him to recover to his peak condition within a short period of time. Asura, it's over. Heavenly Secrets looked at the Asura that walked over with a mocking expression. Channeling a mental cultivation technique, his eyes shone with a strange blood glint as he said slowly, Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Not good. Su Zimo was alarmed. This was the worry he had before the battle. He knew the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra the best. If Heavenly Secrets were to release the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, he could recover rapidly and there would be no doubt about the outcome of this battle. When he saw that, the Storyteller suddenly sighed and shook his head, his eyes filled with disappointment. Yan Beichen did not seem to have heard what Heavenly Secrets said. Or rather, he did not care at all. No matter the cultivation technique Heavenly Secrets released, there was only a single obsession in his heart, to kill the latter. Yan Beichen continued advancing and arrived before Heavenly Secrets before long. He raised the Hatred Fiend's saber and slashed forward. That slash was weak without any saber technique, let alone saber intent. The fact that Yan Beichen could raise the Hatred Fiend's saber and slash down with his arm was already his limit. At that moment, Heavenly Secrets' expression changed starkly as though he was rooted on the spot. His eyes were widened as though he had seen a ghost. Poof! Under countless gazes, the Hatred Fiend's saber slashed at Heavenly Secrets' head and its blade dug into his bones, almost splitting his head into two. That slash even tore through Heavenly Secrets' consciousness. Naturally, even his essence spirit wouldn't be spared. What was going on? Heavenly Secrets was dead. The cultivators present were not the only ones. Even Su Zimo was dumbfounded and looked at everything in disbelief. Chapter 1463 Chess Piece. Chapter 1463, Chess Piece. Yan Beichen was stunned as well. Even he had not expected that his slash could kill Heavenly Secrets. The Hatred Fiend's saber tore through Heavenly Secrets' consciousness and the Hatred Fiend Qi on the saber had already surged in. Before long, Heavenly Secrets' essence spirit would be devoured by the Hatred Fiend Qi. How could this be? Heavenly Secrets' face was covered in blood as his eyes widened in shock and anger. He muttered repeatedly, how could this be? Sigh. The Storyteller sighed deeply with a look of sadness and disappointment in his eyes. Master, how could this be? How did I lose? Heavenly Secrets turned slightly and looked at the Storyteller in disbelief. Heavenly Secrets, if you hadn't used the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra for this battle, it would mean that you still had a conscience. You lost the moment you released that fiend technique. The Storyteller sighed once more with a rueful expression. This time round you've lost completely and utterly. This time round. Heavenly Secrets asked with widened eyes, as though he had thought of something. Su Zimo frowned slightly in deep thought as well. Right then the Storyteller added, someone came and refined the bloodline of this place in advance. MMM? Su Zimo was shocked. Instantly he was enlightened. Monk Daming. Earlier on, Monk Daming was here. However, nobody noticed him at all when the cultivators fought in front of Enigma Palace. Monk Daming secretly absorbed all the bloodlines that were scattered here. That was the reason why Heavenly Secrets was stunned the moment he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. That was because all the bloodlines here had been refined. There was no reaction when he released the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Heavenly Secrets' blood chi was exhausted to begin with. Coupled with the unforeseen event, he was slightly slower and his head was sliced by Yan Beichen. The Storyteller had long known about this. Therefore he knew the outcome the moment Heavenly Secrets used the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. The fact that the storyteller did not capture Monk Daming meant that the latter had already left silently before the storyteller descended. Nobody discovered him throughout the entire process. If the storyteller had not pointed it out, even Su Zimo would not have noticed it. Suddenly, Su Zimo thought of something. Back on Six Stars Mountain, Monk Daming once told him that Enigma Palace might be able to dispel his killing batch. Su Zimo was wary towards Monk Daming. When Monk Daming said that, Su Zimo had this feeling that Monk Daming had another motive. Later on, Monk Daming said that Yen Beichen wanted to come to Enigma Palace to take revenge on Heavenly Secrets. Without much thought, Su Zimo headed straight for Enigma Palace. To think that in the end he would still become a chess piece of Monk Daming. Most importantly, even if Su Zimo knew that Monk Daming was making use of him, he had to come to Enigma Palace. Be it for Lin Xuanji or Yen Beichen, he had to make the trip to Enigma Palace. However, once he arrived at Enigma Palace, he would be made use of by Monk Daming. Such methods were truly many times more brilliant than Heavenly Secrets. However, Su Zimo was still puzzled. If Monk Daming merely wanted to refine bloodlines, was there a need to take the risk to refine it at Enigma Palace? A Mahayana Patriarch was alarmed this time round. There was also the storyteller who was highly likely an emperor. Once Monk Daming's tracks were exposed, it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed. Furthermore, there were not many cultivators who truly died in this battle. Most of them were merely severely injured. As such, there were not many bloodlines. Monk Daming was so cautious. Could he have set up such a trap just to refine that bit of bloodline? It's him. Right then, Heavenly Secrets suddenly roared in a hysterical manner. Blood was still flowing down Heavenly Secrets' face. When he heard that, his features were contorted with a menacing expression that was extremely terrifying. Su Zimo sighed internally as he looked at Heavenly Secrets. As the disciple of the storyteller, Heavenly Secrets planned everything and devised strategies almost flawlessly. Unfortunately, by some freak accident, Su Zimo and the others released Monk Daming in this generation. In the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley, Heavenly Secrets paved the path for Monk Daming and the latter benefited immensely. This time round, Heavenly Secrets was defeated once more. He lost his life in this defeat. Come out. Heavenly Secrets surveyed his surroundings and roared, completely losing his mind. Come out. I want to see who you are. At that moment, Heavenly Secrets looked a little pitiful and tragic. He had already lost before Monk Daming even appeared. He lost twice. He had lost completely and tragically. Most importantly, right from the beginning, Heavenly Secrets did not know who he had lost to. In fact, he did not even know if the person who schemed against him twice in a row was a man or woman, what sect or faction he or she was from, or what he or she looked like. For someone who thought that he was extremely smart and was in control of everything, how much of a blow was that? He left a long time ago. The storyteller shook his head and sighed in disappointment. Left. Heavenly Secrets grinned and fresh blood continued flowing down his cheeks. He murmured twice and suddenly laughed in a deranged manner with a tragic expression. Foo ha ha ha. Heavenly Secrets' gaze landed on Su Zimo and the others as he smiled sinisterly. Chess pieces. You're all chess pieces. Even though he's so powerful, he's nothing but a chess piece for someone else as well. Him. All of you. He pointed at Su Zimo, Yen Beichen and even the storyteller and grinned. None of you can escape. Your fates have long been decided. Ah. Yen Beichen could not listen to it any longer. After resting for a while, he recovered some strength and slashed once more, splitting Heavenly Secrets' head into two. Heavenly Secrets' laughter stopped abruptly. His essence spirit was also shattered by the Hatred Fiend saber and was destroyed on the spot. Thump. Heavenly Secrets' corpse fell heavily in a pool of blood. However, his laughter seemed to echo in everyone's ears for a long time without dissipating. It was unsettling and sent shivers down their spines. The storyteller closed his eyes, seemingly unable to bear it. No matter what, Heavenly Secrets was his disciple after all. He was filled with guilt and self-blame for the state the latter was in today. Lin Xuanji no longer had his usual cheeky attitude and had a grim expression. He could not help but recall the scenes when he was young and often pestered Heavenly Secrets to play with him. At that time, everything was carefree and warm. No matter what they played, Heavenly Secrets could beat him with ease. Even in terms of cultivation realm, Heavenly Secrets was far superior to him and had entered the conjoint body realm long ago. The storyteller had a total of 4 disciples, and Heavenly Secrets was the most outstanding no matter which aspect he compared them from. To think that he would die in front of Enigma Palace today. Pianran, did you see that? The indignance in Yen Beichen's heart was instantly relieved after Heavenly Secrets was killed. He knelt down and looked up into the skies, saying in a daze, "I've killed all the enemies who murdered you. I didn't let any of them off. Pianran, don't worry. I'll accompany you very soon, very soon." After saying that, Yen Beichen could no longer hold on and fell to the ground with a thud, unconscious. He was already exhausted and covered in injuries. The reason why he could last till now was all because of Heavenly Secrets. Now that Heavenly Secrets was executed, he could not hold on either and fainted. Chapter 1464, Gift Bao. Chapter 1464, Gift Bao. Brother Yen. Worried, Su Zimo arrived beside Yen Beichen in a flash and took out a few elixirs from his storage bag, stuffing them into Yen Beichen's mouth forcefully. The storyteller tapped his finger gently and a divine light entered Yen Beichen's body. Yen Beichen's injuries stabilized rapidly. He's fine, merely severely injured. Now that he got his revenge, the tension in his mind was released and thus he was temporarily knocked out. The storyteller said, given his bloodline, he only needs to recuperate for a few days and will recover mostly. Unless he commits suicide, it's difficult for the successor of the Fiend Emperor Hatred to die. His injuries are not external but internal, the storyteller said meaningfully. Su Zimo understood. Yen Beichen's true injury was in his heart. Initially he felt extremely guilty and remorseful. Living in pain every day, the only thing that supported him to survive was revenge. Now that Yen Beichen had taken his revenge and lost his obsession, there was a high chance that he would commit suicide like the Fiend Emperor Hatred. In a while, stay in Enigma Palace for a few days with him. The storyteller said, you can try and talk sense into him when he's awake. Thank you, Senior. Su Zimo expressed his thanks hurriedly. Today Yen Beichen charged into Enigma Palace and even killed half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace. However, instead of blaming Yen Beichen, the storyteller retained him. His bearing and magnanimity was something that the other cultivators of Enigma Palace could not compare to. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe frowned and took a step forward, as though he wanted to say something. Patriarch Qing Cheng glared at him and shook his head gently. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe was alarmed and retreated hurriedly. Su Zimo supported Yen Beichen up first and handed him to Ming Zhen to take care of. He then came before the storyteller and bowed deeply. I was rude today and barged into Enigma Palace, fighting all the cultivators here. Please forgive me, Senior. It's nothing much. There's a reason for it, so you're not to blame. The storyteller did not have any intention of blaming him. Instead, he smiled and said, furthermore, you've already been very restrained compared to the battle at Heaven and Earth Valley. Actually, not many people had truly died up till this point of the battle. Even for some half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace who were severely injured, only their physical bodies were destroyed, their essence spirits managed to escape. Given Su Zimo's capabilities, it would be extremely easy for him to kill their essence spirits. Although the storyteller was not present, he seemed to have seen through everything. He knew in his heart that if Su Zimo were to truly start a massacre, there would be rivers of blood in front of Enigma Palace. Su Zimo handed the dermic-breaking bow over. This is a treasure of Enigma Palace. Since today's matter has been resolved, I'll return it to its owner. The storyteller glanced at it indifferently and said, since you snatched this bow, take it. Ah! Su Zimo froze for a moment. This dermic bow was one of the unique treasures and its terrifying might was revealed earlier on. In his hands the power was even more shocking. The storyteller had given him such a great treasure casually. How can that do? Finally, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe could not help but say, this dermic-breaking bow is an ancient unique treasure and one of the great treasures of Enigma Palace. How can we give it to outsiders casually? You still have the cheek to say that. The storyteller sneered, since you can't even protect the dermic-breaking bow and let someone snatch it away, it proves that the bow is nothing in your hands. You might as well give it to someone else. Even if it's given to others, it can't be desolate Marshal. Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe's face flushed red as he argued, desolate Marshal just killed a conjoint body mighty figure of our palace and severely injured several half-martial ancestor experts. If we give him the dermic-breaking bow, wouldn't the cultivators of the palace be disheartened? Disheartened? The storyteller sneered once more. What's more disheartening than having an incapable palace lord who can't differentiate between right and wrong? Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe shuddered. The storyteller's gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe and the others as he said coldly, "You guys are truly promising. The outcome of a group of you discussing was to join forces with the primordial races. That's akin to asking a tiger for its skin. A primordial taboo is a reason for you guys to join forces with the primordial races. You guys have truly forgotten about your roots. Damn it." The storyteller's tone was extremely stern and his gaze eventually landed on half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe. "Qing Zhe, you're useless and can't tell between right from wrong, twisting the facts. From this day forth, you shall relinquish your position as the palace lord and reflect on your mistakes on your own. Without my orders, you're not to come out of seclusion." The crowd fell into an uproar. Nobody expected that the position of the palace lord of Enigma Palace of half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe would be removed because of this battle. That punishment was extremely severe. Isn't this punishment a little overboard? Patriarch Qing Cheng frowned slightly and whispered. How can we blame this on fellow Daoist Qing Zhe? Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian stood out and looked at the storyteller. Although you're this generation's storyteller of Enigma Palace and have an extraordinary status, you can't be so unreasonable, right? Su Zimo's heart stirred. From the tone of half-martial ancestor Chen Tian, it seemed like the status of being a storyteller was far from simple. Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove nodded as well. Desolate Marshal and the others attacked our sect today and demanded for one of ours. We had no choice but to fight. No matter what, for today's matter, Desolate Marshal and the others were the ones who were rude first. Foo-foo. The storyteller sneered, I've been playing with the mortal world and haven't returned to the palace for a long time. I've got to thank Desolate Marshal this time round. If not for their antics, I wouldn't have known that Enigma Palace would have been reduced to such a state. Enigma Palace sure is a motley place right now. All sorts of troublemakers have popped out for this battle. There was a cold killing intent in the storyteller's tone. Both half-martial ancestor Chen Tian and half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove felt guilty and their gazes flickered. They no longer argued and remained silent. That's not all. The storyteller's expression was cold and he no longer had the cheeky attitude from earlier on as he said slowly, that girl is the successor of Founder Master Ling Long. Even I won't hurt her. Yet you guys tried to kill her? Half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng and the others lowered their heads and did not dare to speak. Indeed, they were in the wrong for this matter. After obtaining Fairy Ling Long's inheritance, Demoness Ji's status was even nobler than the Palace Lord of Enigma Palace. Nobody from Enigma Palace could hurt her. Their attack was equivalent to the greatest disrespect to Founder Master Ling Long. Demoness Ji had a ball of pent-up anger in her heart. Now that she heard the storyteller's words, her anger vanished instantly as she could not help but laugh. Bowing to the storyteller, she said, Senior, thank you for helping me vent my anger. It's nothing. The storyteller waved it off. Senior, I'm fine. Let's forget about today's matter. Demoness Ji did not want to sow grudges with most of the experts of Enigma Palace over such a small matter either. No worries. The storyteller shook his head. Today's matter isn't over yet. The old storyteller's gaze landed on half-martial ancestor Chen Tian and half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove as he asked coldly, when did you guys learn the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, huh? Chapter 1465, Decisive to Kill. Chapter 1465, Decisive to Kill. The expressions of half-martial ancestor Chen Tian and half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove changed starkly. The expressions of half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe, half-martial ancestor Li Heng and the others changed slightly as well. All of them turned to look at the two half-martial ancestors in disbelief. The expressions of the two half-martial ancestors, Chen Tian and Divine Turtle Dove, were terrible and unpredictable. In front of the storyteller, they did not even have the courage to lie. We did cultivate this fiend technique, but that's nothing much, right? Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian forced a smile and explained, Enigma Palace covers a wide spectrum of knowledge and we don't belong to any immortal, Buddhist or fiend sections. There's no lack of cultivation technique from the fiend sects in our sect as well. Other fiend techniques are nothing much, but don't you guys know what sort of a cultivation technique the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra is? The storyteller's gaze was sharp as he said coldly, "Don't you guys know how much of a catastrophe that fiend caused in Tianhuang mainland 40,000 years ago? Once you're tainted by this fiend technique, you'll sink into it. Given your natures, can you control it?" Under the pressure of the storyteller, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove were already drenched in cold sweat and did not dare to say anything. "Speak. Who imparted this fiend technique to you guys?" The storyteller asked slowly. "Heavenly Secrets. Heavenly Secrets was the one." Half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove could not withstand it and was the first to speak. "We've already lived for more than 15,000 years and started entering our later years. However, we haven't been able to advance to the Mahayana realm for a long time. Heavenly Secrets was the one who came looking for us. He told us that there's a cultivation technique that can help us advance to the Mahayana realm. We only cultivated it to become Mahayana patriarchs and strengthen our sect's power." No wonder. A look of realization flashed through Lin Xuanji's eyes. In the past 2 years, as long as Heavenly Secrets made a decision, the two half-martial ancestors, Qian Tian and Divine Turtle Dove, would support him with all their might. Even when they joined forces with the primordial races to imprison Lin Xuanji, these two half-martial ancestors were the first to stand on the side of Heavenly Secrets. However, although the source of how these two learned their fiend cultivation technique was discovered, they would never know how Heavenly Secrets learned it. The storyteller closed his eyes for a long time before opening them slowly. He looked at the two half-martial ancestors, Qian Tian and Divine Turtle Dove, and said in a deep voice, "The two of you have already committed a grave mistake cultivating this fiend technique. On account of your many years in Enigma Palace, I can spare you this once. However, you'll return everything you've learned in this lifetime to Enigma Palace today. From now on, you can be mortals and stop cultivating." Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove were shocked. To be mortals. The storyteller meant that he was going to cripple their cultivations. Both of them lowered their heads slightly and a strange blood glint flashed through the depths of their eyes. All of a sudden, a gigantic blood mist burst forth from the two of them and they turned into two blood lights that fled in two different directions. The speed of the blood lights was way too fast. Almost instantly they were 500 kilometers away. This was blood escape from the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Patriarch Qing Qing frowned and extended his palm, grabbing towards half-martial ancestor Qian Tian. Swoosh. His palm brushed past the blood light. Even when a patriarch attacked, he was a tad slower. The speed of the blood escape technique released by half-martial ancestors after burning their bloodlines was indeed terrifying. By the time Patriarch Qing Qing reacted, the two of them had already fled to the horizons. Ha 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 ha. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian's laughter sounded. "Storyteller old dog, we've worked in Enigma Palace for many years. Even if we didn't contribute, we did our best. Yet, you want to cripple our cultivations with just a few words. Once the two of us escape today, the world will be vast. Old dog, you'll regret this sooner or later. The day we become patriarchs will be the day we make a comeback." Ha 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 ha. Both of them laughed wantonly. The storyteller was expressionless and did not move. Suddenly, he reached out with both palms and yanked in the direction where the two of them were escaping. The feeling was as though he was trying to pull the two half-martial ancestors back from 500 kilometers away. A strange power spread. Although there was no deafening commotion, the two figures that were about to disappear into the horizon gradually became clearer in front of the crowd. Half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove were still releasing blood escape without slowing down at all. However, the distance between the two of them and the storyteller was shrinking continuously. Although it was clearly in the opposite direction, the more they fled, the closer they were to the storyteller. But the cultivators gasped. That method had already surpassed everyone's understanding. Is that a divine power? Su Zimo murmured softly. Before long, half-martial ancestor Qian Tian and half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove were dragged back by the storyteller who was 500 kilometers away. Under the gaze of the storyteller, the two half-martial ancestors were horrified and were still escaping frantically. However, no matter how much strength they exerted, they were only getting closer to the storyteller and they returned to Enigma Palace before long. This time round, both of them were truly scared out of their wits. Please, spare our lives. Half-martial ancestor Chen Tian and half-martial ancestor Divine Turtle Dove knelt with a thud and said incoherently with pale faces. I could have spared your lives earlier on. The storyteller shook his head slowly. But I can't do it now. The moment he said that, the storyteller did not give the two half-martial ancestors a chance to explain and extended his palm, slashing in front of them like a saber. The heads of the two half-martial ancestors seemed to have been sliced into two by some divine weapon as blood gushed out and their essence spirits were destroyed on the spot. Two half-martial ancestors of Enigma Palace were dead. All the cultivators in the world were silent. A half-martial ancestor expert was almost a peak existence in the cultivation world. However, in the hands of the storyteller, two of them were killed casually as though ants were being crushed. Every cultivator of Enigma Palace looked at the storyteller with reverence in their eyes. Su Zimo sighed internally. For the matter of heavenly secrets, the storyteller was slightly hesitant and even gave the former a chance in the end. This gave everyone the illusion that the storyteller was benevolent. However, in reality, the reason why the storyteller was so hesitant was because Heavenly Secrets was his disciple. How could he sever the many years of relationship between master and disciple within a short period of time? However, later on, the storyteller completely displayed his decisiveness to kill. With a few words, he removed the Palace Lord of Enigma Palace. He killed two half-martial ancestors with a thunderous might. He did not hesitate at all. His attack had stunned everyone in Enigma Palace. Bury the two of them. The storyteller waved it off and turned to Su Zimo and the others. It's all thanks to you guys that Enigma Palace is able to get rid of this huge problem today. You're making things sound too serious, Senior? Su Zimo said hurriedly. If you're free, why don't you rest for a few days at Enigma Palace? The storyteller said, at the same time Xuanji can take you guys around. Alright, thank you, Senior. Su Zimo cupped his fist. Yen Beichen was unconscious and could recuperate in Enigma Palace for a few days. At the same time he could find an opportunity to ask about the killing badge of the Bloodvine race. Chapter 1466, Dao Inheritance. Chapter 1466, Dao Inheritance. Let's go, follow me into the palace. The storyteller nodded to Su Zimo and the others and said, I'll take my leave now that this is over. Patriarch Qing Qing bowed slightly to the storyteller and said respectfully, Yes, you can head back. The storyteller waved it off. Patriarch Qing Qing raised his head and glanced at Su Zimo in a seemingly casual manner before turning around. He swiped his palm in the void and created a gigantic crack. In a flash, Patriarch Qing Qing leaped into the crack and vanished. In the blink of an eye, the crack healed gradually and returned to normal. Tearing the void casually, that's the power of the Mahayana realm. The storyteller explained, if one can advance to the Mahayana realm and become a patriarch, they can tear through the void at any moment and cross 5,000 kilometers. Su Zimo nodded, still thinking about the way Patriarch Qing Qing looked at him before departing. There was hostility in that gaze. Because of Su Zimo, half-martial ancestor Qing Zhe's status as the palace lord was relinquished. Even Patriarch Qing Qing was lectured by the storyteller and lost his dignity. Although he said nothing, he definitely felt resentment in his heart. Su Zimo glanced at the storyteller again. Back in the capital of Great Zhou, he had already met this old man. However, who would have thought that this secular old man would possess such a powerful identity and status? Even Mahayana patriarchs had to bow down before him. Senior, are you an emperor? Unable to contain his curiosity, Su Zimo could not help but ask. The storyteller smiled. Yes. That simple word caused Su Zimo and the others' hearts to skip a beat. Even though they had a hunch, when the storyteller actually admitted it, the feeling was entirely different. A legendary emperor was standing right in front of them. Demoness G blinked and asked, Senior, what's your title? Typically, emperors had specific titles. For example, the Human Emperor, Saber Emperor and Thunder Emperor. My title is Mystic. The storyteller said indifferently. Mystic Emperor. Su Zimo thought for a moment and asked again, what's the significance of being a storyteller? The storyteller is a special existence in Enigma Palace that is free from the restrictions of Enigma Palace. The storyteller said, the creation of this existence can be traced back to the ancient era. Founder Master Ling Long's disciple was the first-generation storyteller. In every generation there's only one storyteller. The responsibility of a storyteller is to roam the mortal world and spread stories everywhere. Su Zimo had witnessed the storyteller's storytelling process before. Indeed, he was extremely good in his narration and spoke mostly of strange tales of fiends and demons. Previously, he heard a short passage from the side and it was truly interesting. The storyteller spoke as though everything had truly happened. When he said it, it was as though he was right in the midst of everything and everyone was immersed in it. However, given the high status of the storyteller in Enigma Palace, the fact that his actual responsibility was to roam the mortal world and spread stories was truly incredulous. Why would Enigma Palace set up such an existence? Demonish G asked in confusion. Do you guys know the reason why Fairy Ling Long established Enigma Palace? The storyteller did not reply and asked instead. Su Zimo and the others shook their heads. The storyteller said, from the ancient sages, there is the saying of the three everlasting values. One can establish their worth in the order of virtues, meritorious accomplishments and teachings. Virtues, meritorious accomplishments and teachings. Su Zimo murmured softly in deep thought. The old storyteller continued, the establishment of Enigma Palace was for the sake of establishing teachings. By that, it means for us to record history, continue creating merits, pass down civilization and inherit the Dao. There are many things that people will gradually forget as time passes. However, Enigma Palace will not forget and will record them down and pass them down. I roamed the human world for tens of thousands of years and recounted the tragic era of the human race in the primordial era. I recounted the ancient war and the legacy of the emperors. Everything that happened was real and was recorded in Enigma Palace. That's the culture of our human race. Su Zimo and the others were dumbfounded in shock. Su Zimo had not expected that the stories told by the storyteller around the world were not fiction. They were all a real part of history. Less than that, he had not expected that the establishment of Enigma Palace was not for the sake of imparting dermic arts and secret skills, but the soul and civilization of the entire human race. That was the true intention of Fairy Ling Long when she established Enigma Palace. The storyteller stopped in his tracks and gazed into the distance, lamenting, the world has changed. No race will prosper forever. Founder Master Ling Long had long expected that the fortune of the human race would one day decline as well. Perhaps the human race might encounter great calamities and sufferings. However, as long as Enigma Palace is around, the civilization of the human race will continue forever. As long as civilization is not destroyed, humans will rise once more one day. One day humans will welcome the glorious era of the ancient era where multiple emperors rose. At that point, be it Su Zimo, Demonist Ji or Ming Zhen, all of them looked in the direction of Enigma Palace with reverence. Instantly, everyone seemed to have gone against the flow of time and saw that peerless woman from the ancient era who stood on this land. Although Fairy Ling Long was not an emperor, she was worthy of eternal praise. A moment later, Demonist Ji asked again, Senior, doesn't that mean that Enigma Palace records many things about Tianhuang mainland? That's right. The storyteller nodded with a smile. Senior, what did you mean by the legacy of the emperors? The storyteller smiled. For anybody that's conferred an emperor, Enigma Palace would establish a personal legacy for him and retain a record of his legend. Wow! Demonist Ji exclaimed and said enviously, this can truly be considered as leaving one's mark in history. This was an immense honor. In the cultivation world, the reason why the legends of emperors were widespread was mostly because of Enigma Palace. At that point, the storyteller suddenly turned and looked at Su Zimo with deep anticipation in his eyes. Desolate Marshal, Enigma Palace has decided to establish a personal legacy for you. Ah. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he asked instinctively, didn't you say that only emperors are qualified for personal legacies? Establishing a legacy for you has nothing to do with the status of an emperor. Just because you're Desolate Marshal. You established the martial Dao and imparted martial arts to all living beings. The storyteller said, even the ancient emperors did not establish such merit. That alone is worthy of a personal legacy to be passed down through history. Throughout history, Su Zimo was the only one who had a personal legacy although he was not an emperor. The storyteller continued, I didn't mention the name of this personal legacy because I don't know what your future accomplishments will be. Perhaps being an emperor might not even be your end point. I hope that I'll have the fortune of completing this legacy in my lifetime. If I can't, I'll have to rely on the next generation's storyteller. With that said, the storyteller glanced at Lin Xuanji beside him. Chapter 1467, Changing the Fate of the Human Race. Chapter 1467, Changing the Fate of the Human Race. Everyone turned to Lin Xuanji. Judging from the meaning of the old man, there was a high chance that the position of the next generation storyteller would be passed down to Lin Xuanji. Old man, you're in such a good condition. You don't have to rush to tell me these things. Lin Xuanji mumbled, I'm still young right now and can't take on such a huge responsibility. The storyteller said, every man has his troubles. Although I can divine everything, I can't divine how long I can live. Some things are better said beforehand. Old man, stop it. That sounds ominous. Lin Xuanji frowned again. Although he was always cheeky and impolite towards the storyteller, the latter was his kin in his heart. The storyteller smiled and reminisced. I've taken in 4 disciples in my life and arranged you guys in the order of Tian Di Shen Huang. Heavenly Secrets was your eldest senior brother. Among the 4 of you, Heavenly Secrets was the most talented and cultivated the fastest. Be it in combat strength or intelligence, he was far superior to you guys. Lin Xuanji nodded. Senior brother is indeed stronger than me. The 4 of you have different personalities. Heavenly Secrets has a calm personality and was the most mature. DG is a little rigid and orderly, not understanding how to adapt. Huang Ji is honest and kind-hearted. As for you? The old storyteller looked at Lin Xuanji and paused for a moment. Your personality is the most similar to mine, wild and cynical. Normally speaking, the most suitable successor to inherit the position of storyteller should be Heavenly Secrets. Unfortunately, a moment of neglect from me and he veered onto the wrong path, resulting in a state of no return. At the mention of Heavenly Secrets, the storyteller's eyes still revealed a hint of sadness. No matter what, Heavenly Secrets was his eldest disciple and his intelligence, personality, talent and combat strength far surpassed Lin Xuanji and the other 2. The storyteller had high hopes for Heavenly Secrets as well. To think that in order to cultivate the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, Heavenly Secrets schemed against all the experts in the world and created rivers of blood in the Battle of Heaven and Earth Valley. Senior, traces of the primordial races have appeared on Tianhuang mainland all these years and they are restless. It's best for the cultivation world to make preparations beforehand. Su Zimo could not help but say. The storyteller did not reply and glanced sideways. I'm sure you must be very disappointed with the various major sects and factions of the cultivation world, right? Su Zimo did not say anything, but it was a silent acknowledgement. He had experienced many things all these years. The current cultivators no longer had the same tough stance towards the primordial races. Instead, they were filled with fear. Southern Dual Sect of the South region was destroyed by the Blood Vine race, but none of the super sects appeared. Nobody was willing to get involved unless they were personally injured. However, if the major sects and factions maintained the same attitude, the primordial races would leave the Forbidden Grounds sooner or later to invade and kill everywhere in Tianhuang mainland. At that time, who could avoid them? No egg could remain whole if the nest was overturned. Actually, it's not their fault. The storyteller said, firstly, humans have never been threatened for a long time in history. Given such an environment, they will naturally shy from battle. Secondly, the fortune of the human race has indeed fallen in this generation. Be it Mahayana patriarchs or emperors, the number of them is far less than in the ancient era. Some super sects don't even have emperors backing them. There's no way they can fight against the primordial races head-on. Su Zimo nodded. Dipamkara Monastery was one of them. The storyteller continued, thirdly and most importantly, the current cultivation world lacks a supreme expert that can lead the human race. In the ancient era, there was a supreme expert like the human emperor. When he called upon the other emperors to gather, none of them would dare to disobey someone like him. But now the human race lacks an expert as such. Su Zimo gradually understood. The only way of battling the primordial races was by gathering the emperors of the world together. However, what sort of people were the emperors? All of them were top existences in Tianhuang mainland. Without a supreme expert who could suppress and call upon the entire world, who would be willing to bow down? Senior, even you can't do it? Su Zimo asked. No. The storyteller shook his head. Be it in terms of reputation or combat strength, I'm far from that. As the storyteller of Enigma Palace, I might be able to gather some emperors. However, we'll most likely be doomed if we go against the primordial races. Su Zimo frowned deeply with a heavy heart. In that case, there was a high chance that the human race would be suppressed completely if the primordial races joined forces and launched an unprecedented war against the human race. At that time, the primordial races would regain control of Tianhuang mainland. Similar to the primordial era, humans would be enslaved and treated as food without freedom. The storyteller thought for a moment and continued, "Of course, you guys don't have to be overly pessimistic. There are still some variables in this generation after all." With that said, he smiled and looked at Su Zimo. "Me?" Su Zimo froze for a moment. The storyteller nodded. "Firstly, you have a clone that cultivates in the dragon race and has a noble status as the young master of the dragon race. I believe that with your temperament, if the human race is in trouble, your dragon phoenix true body will definitely not sit by idly." Su Zimo nodded. If the human race was truly in trouble, the dragon phoenix true body would do his best to persuade the dragon race to help the human race. The storyteller continued, "Secondly, the birth of the taboos. 2 out of 3 of the great taboos of the primordial era have appeared. Furthermore, right now, both of them are on the side of the human race. Their only weakness is that they have truly yet to grow." Su Zimo did not reply. Actually, there was a high chance this generation would be an unprecedented situation where 3 primordial taboos were gathered. If they had enough time and the 3 primordial taboos grew, the primordial races would definitely have no chance of winning. Unfortunately, the primordial races would not give them much time. There's a third variable. The storyteller looked at Su Zimo and paused for a moment. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Could the storyteller have divined the existence of the martial Dao prime body? Actually, the martial Dao prime body was the greatest variable. After a brief pause, he continued, "The third variable is you. In this generation, the human race lacks a supreme expert that can command the world. Your body has fused perfectly with the creation green lotus and your future accomplishments are unpredictable." At that point, Su Zimo was certain that the storyteller still did not know of the existence of the martial Dao prime body despite his divine powers. "Senior, that's too much to hope for." Su Zimo laughed bitterly. "I've only just entered the conjoint body realm and I'm not even a half-martial ancestor, let alone someone who can command the world and make emperors submit to my orders. That's why it's a variable." The storyteller said, "The battle between the primordial races and humans is inevitable in this generation. If you can grow into a peerless expert before that, the fate of the human race will change because of that. You once altered the fate of all living beings. I hope that you can do the same for humans." Heaven, earth, black and yellow in meaning. Unlike heavenly secrets, some of the names don't have special meanings when joined together. Chapter 1468 Book Robbery. Chapter 1468, Book Robbery. The storyteller had high hopes for Su Zimo. Of course, as the storyteller had said, he was a variable. There was still a long way for Su Zimo to grow to the point where all the emperors in the world would submit to him. But now, the situation on Tianhuang mainland was changing rapidly. Su Zimo did not have much time left. As the storyteller spoke, he led everyone and entered Enigma Palace. From the outside, they could not see the full view of Enigma Palace yet. One could only truly experience the vicissitudes of time after entering the territory of Enigma Palace. The magnitude of emotions was not something that other sects and factions could compare to. Suddenly, the storyteller frowned and exclaimed softly. His gaze shifted and landed on an area of Enigma Palace. Su Zimo looked over as well. A gigantic palace stood in that area. It was 1,000 feet tall and soared into the skies with 9 levels. Each level could accommodate more than 100,000 people. A gigantic word was written on the plaque of the palace. Library. "What's wrong, old man?" Lin Xuanji asked casually when he saw the odd expression on the storyteller's face. "An outsider has been here." The storyteller's expression darkened slightly and his words were shocking. "Ah." Shocked, Lin Xuanji asked, "What do you mean? An outsider came to the library?" There were many secret manuals and ancient books in the library. The cultivation techniques and secret manuals were not the most important, it was the history books. The library was an important place for Enigma Palace and even the palace master of Enigma Palace could not enter casually. What would happen if outsiders entered the library? "I'll go take a look." Lin Xuanji moved and said before running over. "He left a long time ago." The storyteller harumphed coldly. The people in the palace are truly a bunch of useless fools. They were played like idiots and did not even know that an outsider came to the library. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he murmured, "Could it be him?" The storyteller nodded slightly. "If I'm not wrong, the bloodlines outside Enigma Palace were also refined by this person." Monk Daming. The final doubt in Su Zimo's heart was finally resolved. Initially, he had his doubts as to why Monk Daming would set up such a trap if he merely wanted to refine bloodlines. Firstly, there were not many bloodlines left behind in this battle. Secondly, it was truly not worth it for Monk Daming to come here and refine the bloodlines given the immense threat of Enigma Palace. It was only now that Su Zimo understood. Monk Daming set this trap for him to run in front of Enigma Palace and fight against the cultivators of Enigma Palace. His true goal was not to refine the bloodlines, it was to get to Enigma Palace's library. Now that he thought about it, Monk Daming should have refined the bloodlines in front of Enigma Palace casually after he came to the library. If Heavenly Secrets did not use the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra, he might have had a chance of surviving. However, in the intense battle with Yen Beichen, an accident would definitely happen the moment he activated the Blood Refinement Fiend Sutra. Heavenly Secrets viewed Monk Daming as his greatest opponent. However, right from the beginning, Monk Daming did not take Heavenly Secrets seriously at all. A casual action of his cost the life of the most outstanding successor of Enigma Palace. "Senior, do you know who he is?" Su Zimo asked in a testing manner. "I've divined it." The storyteller paused for a moment before shaking his head. "However, I couldn't divine him. He is extremely powerful." Ever since the storyteller appeared, he gave Su Zimo the feeling that he was omniscient, omnipotent and knew everything in the world. However, even the storyteller could not divine Monk Daming's identity. Right now, Su Zimo was probably the only one who truly knew about Monk Daming. He hesitated for a moment and did not reveal Monk Daming's identity to the storyteller. No matter what, Monk Daming had saved his life before. Furthermore, even Su Zimo was not certain whether Monk Daming was truly evil right now. "Let's go to the library to check out what's missing," the storyteller said indifferently and led Su Zimo and the others to the front of the library. He flicked his sleeves gently and the door to the hall opened. On the ground at the entrance lay two figures that were tied up tightly and could not move at all. The two of them seemed to have been cursed and could not speak. They could only stare at the storyteller with widened eyes. "Senior brother, junior brother, you guys." Lin Xuanji froze for a moment. The two of them were the other two disciples of the storyteller, DG and Huangji. "Although I know that it's not great, for some reason I just want to laugh." "Ah." Lin Xuanji burst into laughter. The two cultivators blushed in shame. The storyteller extended his finger and swiped across their bodies through the void. The ropes on both of them snapped instantly. Both of them were at the conjoined body realm and a rope that could bind them was definitely an extraordinary item. But now it was crippled by the storyteller. The two of them stood up and ran to the storyteller before kneeling down. "Master, I deserve to die for failing to protect the library. Please punish me, Master." DG kowtowed repeatedly. With an ashamed expression, Huangji whispered, "Master, I've embarrassed you." Su Zimo lamented internally, the storyteller's evaluation is truly not wrong. DG has a stiff personality and obeys rules rigidly while Huangji looks to be kind and honest. "Get up, it's not your fault." The storyteller did not have any intention of blaming them and continued asking, "Do you guys know what he did in the library?" "I don't know." Huangji replied honestly, however that person did not stay in the library for long before leaving. He said that the reason why he came this time round was because he wanted to borrow the Mystic Firmament record to take a look. Once he was done reading it, he would definitely return it and not spread it outside. The Mystic Firmament record. Su Zimo was secretly speechless. That was the establishment foundation of Enigma Palace. It was created by Fairy Ling Long and was all-encompassing, only completed after the Eternal Human Emperor perfected it. To think that Monk Daming would steal it away today. That was a huge fortune. The storyteller did not enter the hall and merely closed his eyes to sense before nodding. Indeed, he took away the Mystic Firmament record. "I deserve to die. I deserve to die." DG knelt down once more and kowtowed furiously. Although his forehead was filled with blood, he had no intention of stopping. "Senior brother, hurry and get up. Don't damage your brains." Lin Xuanji hurried forward and pulled DG up forcefully. Fu. The storyteller suddenly laughed. Both DG and Huangji were confused and even wanted to die. They did not know how the storyteller could still smile. That's incredible. The storyteller praised, to think that he could come to Enigma Palace and steal the Mystic Firmament record. Impressive. Master, why are you still praising him? The loss of the Mystic Firmament record is a huge matter. Huangji could not help but ask. Forget it, let him be. The storyteller smiled suavely. That person is rather interesting. He merely said that he's borrowing the book to read. Furthermore, he even promised that he would return it without spreading it. Chapter 1469, Origin of Monk Daming. Chapter 1469, Origin of Monk Daming. Standing in front of the library, Su Zimo suddenly recalled something. This matter pertained to a guess he had regarding Monk Daming's identity. If the library truly contained many books that recorded history and many other things as the storyteller had said, there was a high chance he could get the verification he wanted within one of the ancient books in the library. Senior, can I enter the library to take a look? Su Zimo said, I'm not going to look at the cultivation techniques and secret skills of Enigma Palace. I just want to look through the records of history from tens of thousands of years ago and verify some things. How can that do? Before the storyteller could reply, DG glared and said in a deep voice, What's your identity? The library is an important place. It's not a place that an outsider like you can enter casually. Lin Xuanji pouted. Senior brother, stop talking. Didn't an outsider just enter and even steal the Mystic Firmament record? If anyone else in Enigma Palace knows about this, it'll definitely cause a huge uproar. Although DG was flushed red from the rebuttal, he straightened his neck and argued, It's different. Since we already made a mistake, we can't continue making more mistakes. That's enough. The storyteller waved it off and nodded to Su Zimo. Of course you're qualified to take a look. However, there are many books in the library and there are countless records of history. Which year do you want to take a look at? Why don't you say it and we'll have Xuanji bring you there directly so that you don't have to spend your energy searching. Around 30,000 to 40,000 years ago. Su Zimo replied ambiguously. All right. The storyteller looked at Lin Xuanji. Take Desolate Marshal in. He glanced sideways and smiled when he saw Demonist G's curious expression. If you're curious, you can follow along and take a look. Master, that can't do. Unable to hold it in, DG stood out once more and said in a deep voice, It's fine if you make an exception once, but how can you do it repeatedly? Where are the rules of the sect? She's the successor of founder Master Ling Long. Do you think she's qualified? The storyteller glared at DG and blew his beard as he asked. With a stunned expression, DG murmured, That means she's qualified. Kid, you're trying to ascend to the heavens, huh? The storyteller pointed at DG's nose and scolded as he smacked the latter's head. You even dare to boss me around now when I'm trying to do something? You even want to talk to me about sect rules? On the other side, Lin Xuanji waved to Su Zimo and Demonist G. Let's go, I'll take you guys in. After being scolded by the storyteller, DG wilted completely and did not even dare to breathe heavily. As for the storyteller, he looked at the backs of Su Zimo and the other two and stroked his long beard, murmuring, Something major that happened 30,000 to 40,000 years ago, the battle between the Blood Fiend and Monk Daming? In the library. There was a heavenly piercing stone pillar that required dozens of people to wrap around. It stood in the middle of the hall and connected to the entire library. Around the stone pillar were many ancient books. There were even more ancient books and bamboo scrolls on the walls around the hall. Lin Xuanji was rather familiar with this place and brought Su Zimo and Demonist G inside. They only stopped after dozens of steps. Everything that happened around 30,000 to 40,000 years ago is recorded in these ancient books. Take a look. Lin Xuanji pointed to a row of books on the wall. Thank you. Su Zimo expressed his thanks and walked forward, casually picking up an ancient book to browse through. Demonist G closed in as well and picked one up to read. After a long time, Demonist G was getting impatient. Initially, she came in to take a look out of curiosity. To her surprise, the contents of the report were extremely boring and she lost interest after a casual glance. However, Su Zimo continued browsing as though he was searching for something. Demonist G did not leave either and accompanied him quietly at the side, casually picking up an ancient book to pass time. On the other side, Su Zimo flipped through another ancient book and suddenly stopped after flipping a few pages. This ancient book recorded the battle between Dao Lord Blood Fiend and Monk Daming 40,000 years ago. The records of that battle were similar to what Monk Yuan Bei had said. The two of them fought 3 times, but there was no clear victor. After the final battle, both of them went missing and their fates were unknown. They had never appeared till now and should have died. What Su Zimo wanted to know about was not this battle. He wanted to know about the origin of Monk Daming. There was a sentence recorded in the ancient book. Monk Daming was not human and was a remnant of the Heavenly Eye race. He was abandoned by the Heavenly Eye race and taken in by Daming Monastery later on. True enough. That statement verified Su Zimo's speculation on 6 Stars Mountain. Monk Daming was not a human. He was from the Heavenly Eye race. Back when he first met Monk Daming in the Grand Primordium Ancient Temple, Su Zimo caught a vague glimpse of a blood scar on his glabella. However, the scar was covered by Daming Monastery's long hair and was not obvious. It was only until this time round on 6 Stars Mountain when he witnessed Monk Daming fight against the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor with his own eyes that he saw everything clearly. The scar was way too similar to the Heavenly Eye race's Heavenly Eye. That was also the reason why the scar could defend against the Green Lotus Sword and the Essence Spirit secret skill of the Bloodvine half-martial ancestor. That was because Heavenly Eye was the strongest technique of the Heavenly Eye race to begin with. In that case, Monk Daming had yet to truly use his Heavenly Eye trump card. He merely used his Heavenly Eye to defend. It was hard to imagine how devastating and apocalyptic the scene would be if he had attacked with his Heavenly Eye. At the same time, another doubt in Su Zimo's mind was resolved. The skeleton in the stone coffin deep underground was Monk Daming. However, Monk Daming was someone from 40,000 years ago. He was trapped in the stone coffin underground for 40,000 years. Even conjoint body mighty figures with 20,000 years of lifespan would have long died, let alone Dharma characteristic Dao Lords. However, Monk Daming did not die. Instead, he appeared in this generation. Although it was partly because of the Mingwang prayer beads, there was no way Monk Daming could have lived for more than 40,000 years. Today Su Zimo finally understood. That was because Monk Daming was not human to begin with, he was from the Heavenly Eye race. Even though he was a remnant of the Heavenly Eye race, his lifespan at the Dharma characteristic realm was far longer than humans, and that was why he could last 40,000 years in the stone coffin. After resolving that doubt, Su Zimo was prepared to leave. Right then he swept his gaze across and looked at the ancient book in Demoness G's hands. With a thought he asked, "What's in this ancient book of yours?" "It's nothing much, just an unforeseen event of the fiend sex 20,000 years ago." Demoness G shrugged her shoulders casually. 20,000 years ago. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. "Let me take a look." Based on time, there was 1,000 demon tribulation 30,000 years ago. There was the Great Qian Empire War 10,000 years ago. In that case, something major might have happened 20,000 years ago. Chapter 1470, Astral Tribulation. Chapter 1470, Astral Tribulation. Back at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley, Su Zimo told Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost about the blood face in the 1,000-year blood sea of Thousand Demon Valley. Thereafter, the red-headed ghost mentioned the Thousand Demon Tribulation. It was said that the battle 30,000 years ago was extremely tragic, and not only were the demons of Thousand Demon Valley involved, even the demons of the other 7 demon regions were implicated. In that battle, countless fiend demons and even demon emperors died. After that battle, the 8 demon regions took huge losses. That was the reason why this battle was known as the Thousand Demon Tribulation. If the appearance of the blood face in the ruins of the Great Qian Empire and the Thousand Demon Tribulation was not a coincidence. In that case, something major might have happened in Tianhuang mainland 20,000 years ago. Su Zimo took the ancient book Demoness G handed him and read it. 6 fiend sects. Su Zimo murmured softly. Demoness G nodded. Actually, 20,000 years ago, the situation in Tianhuang mainland was divided between the 9 immortal sects, 8 Buddhist monasteries and 6 fiend sections. Su Zimo knew about the 8 Buddhist monasteries. The 2 super sects of the Buddhist monasteries, Daming Monastery and Fahua Monastery, were destroyed in the Battle of the Great Qian Empire 10,000 years ago and turned into the current 6 Buddhist monasteries. He truly did not know about the 6 fiend sections. Demonist G said, 20,000 years ago, there was no heavenly dipper sect among the 9 immortal sections. Instead there was another major sect, the Astral sect. Also, Malevolent Earth sect was not among the Fiend sections. Later on, Astral Emperor of Astral sect failed his tribulation and was electrocuted into ashes by the heavenly tribulation, leading to a crisis for Astral sect. The terror of tribulation transcendence was such that even emperors would die with their essence spirits destroyed if they were careless. Demonist G continued, at that critical juncture, Patriarch Astral was ambushed by a patriarch of the Fiend sects and nearly died. Enraged, he triggered a massive battle against the Fiend sects. In that battle, 5 of the 9 immortal sects were embroiled in it. As for the 6 Fiend sects, they took part and fought till the end, even escalating to a fight between emperors. As he listened to Demonist G's description, Suzimo browsed through the ancient books and matched them. The ancient books recorded that more than 30 Mahayana patriarchs of the immortal and Fiend sects died in this battle, and even Patriarch Astral died. Even 3 emperors were dead. At that point, Suzimo was secretly speechless. The foundation of a super sect was truly terrifying. Up till this point of his cultivation, Suzimo rarely saw Mahayana patriarchs because he had not cultivated to that level. After all, Mahayana patriarchs had a lifespan of 100,000 years. Even if the super sects could only produce one every 10,000 years, after 100,000 years, they would have 10. Demonist G sighed. In the end, the Dharma Emperor of the Buddhist monasteries and the others mediated and managed to calm the battle down. Even so, that battle caused great damage to the Fiend sections. As for the 9 immortal sects, Astral sect was destroyed and split into 2 major sects. One of them is the current Heavenly Dipper sect of the 9 immortal sects, and the other is Malevolent Earth sect of the 7 Fiend sections. At that point, Suzimo was enlightened. Back when he first met Demonist G, she had already looked down on Malevolent Earth sect and said that Malevolent Earth sect was not a true Fiend sect. But now, he finally understood, Malevolent Earth sect was formerly Astral sect of the immortal sects. That battle could be considered as a catastrophe for the immortal and Fiend sections. Astral sect was even split into 2, and everything was referred to by the later generations as the Astral Tribulation. After a while, Demonist G saw that Suzimo was still buried in the ancient book, reading it repeatedly as though he was searching for something. Zimo, what are you looking for? Demonist G asked. Suzimo replied, I'm looking for the problem behind this battle. What do you mean? Demonist G was puzzled. Suzimo did not reply. After flipping through the ancient book a few times, he asked, who was the patriarch of the Fiend sects who attacked Patriarch Astral? I'm not sure. Demonist G shook her head. Suzimo pointed to the ancient book in his hands. That's the problem. Even the ancient books of Enigma Palace have no record of this patriarch of the Fiend sects. This matter was the reason for the Astral Tribulation, but nobody knew who this patriarch of the Fiend sects was. Demonist G frowned. What can that prove? This must be absolutely true. Otherwise, Patriarch Astral wouldn't have been enraged and launched a massive battle against the Fiend sects. Suzimo did not argue. In truth, it was the same as the Great Chen catastrophe. Be it the 1,000 demon or astral tribulations, the 2 calamities carried the same strangeness. For the Great Chen catastrophe, Monk Yuan Bei and the red-headed ghost, 2 people who witnessed it personally, speculated with one another, and Dai Yu intervened. Later on, they uncovered the strangeness behind the Great Chen catastrophe. As for the 1,000 demon and astral tribulations, they broke out 20,000 to 30,000 years ago. Anyone who had experienced both calamities personally would have died a long time ago. Even if Suzimo could sense that something was amiss with the 2 calamities, he could not discover the true problem. The truth of the past might be buried with time. However, this matter confirmed his guess. The 1,000 demon tribulation, astral tribulation and Great Chen catastrophe were no coincidences. Now that I think about it, another 10,000 years have passed since the Great Chen catastrophe. Suzimo murmured softly with a grim expression. The dangers of Tianhuang mainland did not merely come from the primordial races. There was also a pair of invisible blood hands that were stirring the clouds and manipulating all living beings. Let's leave this place. Taking a deep breath of air, Suzimo buried those thoughts in his heart and left the library with Demonist G. The storyteller did not leave and stood at the entrance of the hall, gazing into the distance in deep thought. Ming Zhen, Little Fatty, Shi Jian and Yen Beichen were gone. It was likely that the cultivators of Enigma Palace had already arranged for them to rest. You found the answer you wanted. The storyteller glanced sideways and asked with a smile. Su Zimo nodded. Initially, the reason why he entered the library was because he wanted to find out the secret behind monk daming. To think that he even found out about the catastrophe 20,000 years ago by accident. You were the one who destroyed the Bloodvine race on 6 Stars Mountain, right? The storyteller asked. Yes. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before nodding. Half of it was done by monk daming. However, since monk daming did not want to reveal himself, Su Zimo did not take the initiative to mention him. Why did you come directly to Enigma Palace after 6 Stars Mountain? The storyteller asked again. Su Zimo was just about to talk about this matter as he spoke in a deep voice. The Bloodvine race set a killing badge on me. Someone told me that Enigma Palace might be able to help me resolve it. MMM? The storyteller's expression changed starkly as he spun around. A gray fog appeared in the storyteller's eyes, as though he could see through all the secrets on Su Zimo. Indeed. The mist in the storyteller's eyes gradually dispersed as he frowned. Extending his palm, he divined with his fingers and a divine light flashed through his eyes as he hollered, "Not good." Chapter 1471 Blood Rebirth. Chapter 1471, Blood Rebirth. Senior, what's wrong? Su Zimo asked hurriedly. The feelings that the storyteller gave off were always that he was either teasing, scolding, being calm and composed or decisive to kill. However, he had never had such an expression. The Bloodvine race is here. After saying that, the storyteller waved both hands in front of him. Instantly, a mysterious and powerful might filled the void, blanketing the skies and enveloping the entire Enigma Palace. That power did not have a strong killing intent. Instead, it seemed mysterious and ethereal. However, against that power, Su Zimo felt as insignificant as a speck of dust that could be drowned at any moment. All of you head to the library and don't come out. Waving his sleeves, the storyteller pushed Su Zimo and Demonist G back into the library and with a boom, the door to the library closed. In the library, Su Zimo held his breath and looked nervous. Judging from the storyteller's stance, the people from the Bloodvine race this time round were definitely not easy to deal with. There was at least an Ancestor Realm expert. Some Ancestor Realm experts of the primordial races could even fight against emperors of the human race. Swoosh. Right then, a large blood-colored cloud floated over from the distant horizon and surged over at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, it arrived before Enigma Palace. Mahayana Realm. Even though they were hiding in the library, Su Zimo and Demonist G could still sense the terrifying blood stench outside. It was far beyond the conjoint body realm. In the Battle of 6 Stars Mountain, Ting Lingzi and more than 10,000 Bloodvine race beings died without a single survivor. Monk Daming said that it was highly likely a Patriarch of the Bloodvine race would be alarmed over this matter. He was right again. In order to kill a conjoint body mighty figure like Su Zimo, the Bloodvine race sent out a Mahayana Patriarch. Su Zimo listened intently with a sense of nervousness. After all, he was the one who attracted the Bloodvine race. If a huge battle that resulted in the death of many cultivators were to break out in front of Enigma Palace, he would definitely feel extremely guilty. Right then, a small hand took the initiative to tug at his palm. It was warm and soft, calming his mind gradually. Glancing sideways, Su Zimo caught sight of Demonist G's bright eyes. Those eyes that could bewitch the masses revealed a hint of comfort and gentleness at the moment. "It's fine, Senior Storyteller is around." Demonist G sent a voice transmission secretly. Su Zimo nodded and smiled. In the skies in front of Enigma Palace, a crack appeared on the blood-colored clouds and an ancient blood-colored vine extended from within. At the top of the blood vines, a human face without eyes and nose opened its mouth, revealing menacing fangs that shone with a cold glint. The blood vine seemed to be surveying something within Enigma Palace, scanning it over and over again. However, the blood vine seemed to know something and hovered outside the exquisite killing formation the entire time, not daring to take a single step in. The commotion here had already attracted many Enigma Palace cultivators. Humph! The storyteller's figure suddenly appeared in midair. "What are you doing here at Enigma Palace, Patriarch Blood Fortune?" He glared coldly at the blood vine in midair and barked, "What are you waiting for? Scram!" The storyteller was extremely domineering and did not stand on courtesy. With a holler from the storyteller, the blood-colored clouds dispersed and the blood vine retracted, turning into a figure that stood in midair in the blink of an eye. Patriarch Blood Fortune did not look big and was merely middle-aged. However, his eyes were filled with a strong bloodlust and killing intent and his lips were bloodshot. Hee hee. Patriarch Blood Fortune let out a strange laughter. So, the Mystic Emperor is the one guarding this place. How unfortunate. Let's not beat around the bush. Desolate Marshal is in Enigma Palace, right? Can't you see for yourself whether he's in Enigma Palace? The storyteller was expressionless as he sneered. Since you guys released the killing badge on him even with your capabilities, you're unable to find him, Patriarch Blood Fortune? Hee hee. Patriarch Blood Fortune glared at the storyteller coldly and smiled. Earlier on, I even caught sight of the killing badge's aura around here. However, for some unknown reason, it vanished in the blink of an eye. Go and look for it then. Don't stay at Enigma Palace, scram. The storyteller cursed once more with a chilling killing intent in his eyes. It was as though he was prepared to attack the next moment. Sensing something, Patriarch Blood Fortune retreated a few steps and sneered, Mystic Emperor, let me advise you not to get involved in this mess. That lad, Desolate Marshal, is already hunted by our primordial 6 races. Although I'm unable to detect Desolate Marshal's aura here today, if an emperor of our Bloodvine race comes, he'll definitely be able to locate Desolate Marshal. If we discover Desolate Marshal's location in Enigma Palace at that time, you'll be prepared to endure the wrath of the primordial 6 races. How noisy. Suddenly, the storyteller extended his palm and swiped viciously in the direction of Patriarch Blood Fortune, shouting softly, Great ripping technique. Swoosh. Although the storyteller merely waved his hand simply, an extremely terrifying power burst forth from his palm and the entire void was torn into 2. It's a great divine power. Patriarch Blood Fortune's expression changed starkly as he turned to flee. Even so, he was still a step slower. He had not expected the storyteller to be so domineering that the latter wanted to suppress him without a second word. The great divine power descended on him instantly. Instantly, his body was shredded into countless pieces and blood spewed everywhere. Under the power of that great divine power, the shattered flesh continued to explode and turned into blood mists. This could already be considered as tearing his corpse apart. Even conjoined body mighty figures who could regrow severed limbs wouldn't be able to heal from this. However, right then, a blood beam surged into the skies from the blood mist and escaped into the distance. The blood mist in midair surged towards the blood beam at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the blink of an eye, Patriarch Blood Fortune's body recovered completely. The cultivators of Enigma Palace exclaimed when they saw that. This must be a divine power that can only be comprehended at the Mahayana realm, blood rebirth. How terrifying. It's too difficult to kill a Mahayana Patriarch. Conjoint body mighty figures had boundless dermic powers and could regrow severed limbs. At the Mahayana realm, one would possess divine powers. As long as their essence spirits were not destroyed, they could be reborn even with a single drop of blood, let alone a severed arm. Earlier on, Patriarch Blood Fortune released the divine power of blood rebirth. Mystic Emperor, don't be smug. The Bloodvine race will return. Although Patriarch Blood Fortune had already fled far away, his voice was filled with hatred and vengefulness. The storyteller had an indifferent expression as he looked at the fleeing blood beam without chasing after it. Everyone disperse. He returned to Enigma Palace and remarked casually. The group of cultivators from Enigma Palace dispersed one after another, but all of them were still discussing in hushed voices excitedly. Chapter 1472, Kunlun Ruins. Chapter 1472, Kunlun Ruins. Although Su Zimo and Demonish Ji were hiding in the library, they could still sense the situation outside using their spirit consciousnesses. Both of them exchanged glances and could see the shock in the other's eyes. The power of the Mahayana realm was completely beyond the other realms. For those beneath Golden Core realm, they would mostly fight in melee combat with spirit arts. There were many more techniques above the Golden Core realm such as dermic arts, secret skills, heaven and earth dharma characteristics and essence spirit fights. For Mahayana patriarchs, divine powers were the strongest. Divine powers were also the biggest difference between Ancestor Realm experts and conjoined body mighty figures. Although the divine power released by the storyteller did not look like anything much, its might was extremely terrifying. Even a blood-vine patriarch's body was torn into a blood mist. It's fine now, come on out. Just as Su Zimo and Demoness G were letting their imaginations run wild, the voice of the storyteller sounded and the door to the library opened. Thank you for saving me, Senior. Su Zimo came before the storyteller and bowed deeply. It's nothing. The storyteller shook his head slightly, but there was still a hint of worry on his face. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he vaguely guessed something. He probed, Senior, Enigma Palace won't be able to dispel the killing badge on me either, right? Yes. The storyteller did not hide anything and nodded. Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled the scene when Patriarch Blood Fortune arrived outside Enigma Palace. The latter did not seem entirely certain that Su Zimo was in Enigma Palace either. Right then, the storyteller explained, when I saw the killing badge on your body, I used a divine power to seal your aura temporarily, concealing the heavenly secrets. Suddenly, Su Zimo was enlightened. After realizing that something was amiss, the storyteller waved both hands in front of him and released a boundless energy that enveloped the skies of Enigma Palace. So, the storyteller had already released a divine power at that time. The storyteller said, with this divine power, even Mahayana patriarchs of the primordial races won't be able to discover you. However, after a brief pause, he continued, if emperors of the blood vine or heavenly eye race were to arrive, my divine power would probably be exposed. Su Zimo's eyes lit up. In Tianhuang mainland, as an emperor, the storyteller was definitely one of the strongest cultivators he had encountered so far. However, even the storyteller and Enigma Palace could not do anything about it. This meant that other sects like Ethereal Peak and 100 Refinement sect would be even more helpless. Although Tianhuang mainland was huge, there was nowhere he could hide with the killing badge. What should we do then? Demoness G was a little anxious. Senior, you're divinely powerful. You definitely have a solution. Senior, since Enigma Palace doesn't have a way either, I'll leave tomorrow. Su Zimo pondered for a moment and said in a deep voice. To be fair, he had no clue where he should go next either. However, he would not benefit from staying in Enigma Palace apart from implicating it. To think that I would be in such a state after the battle at 6 Stars Mountain. Su Zimo murmured internally. Although he obtained the Ashoka wood, he also had the killing badge planted on him and would eventually be hunted down by the Bloodvine race. There was no time or place for him to refine and cultivate it. The outcome of this Green Lotus true body was probably decided. This was a hopeless situation. The storyteller looked at Su Zimo deeply and suddenly asked, do you regret it? MMM? Su Zimo was stunned for a moment before he understood that the storyteller was asking him if he regretted the battle at 6 Stars Mountain. He burst into laughter and shook his head. I don't. Even if I have to do it again, I would have killed my way through 6 Stars Mountain. As expected of Desolate Marshal. The storyteller nodded in satisfaction and praised. Actually, there's still a way for you to dispel the killing badge on your body and get out of this deadly situation. Suddenly he said. Delighted, Su Zimo asked hurriedly, Senior, please explain. The storyteller narrowed his eyes and said slowly, there's an unknown place in Tianhuang mainland that even Mahayana patriarchs and the various emperors don't dare to step foot into. Ah? Su Zimo asked, even emperors of the primordial races don't dare to step foot in. That's a forbidden ground for the primordial races. The storyteller's words were shocking. In the cultivation world, the 9 forbidden grounds for the human race actually corresponded to the habitat of the primordial 9 races. But now, for the first time, Su Zimo was hearing of a place in Tianhuang mainland that was a forbidden ground for the primordial races such that even their emperors won't dare to step foot in. Senior, are you referring to that place? As though she recalled something, Demoness G looked to the west instinctively. That's right. The storyteller nodded. Extreme west, Kunlun ruins. Kunlun ruins. Su Zimo murmured softly. That was a name that was extremely foreign to him. What is that place? He could not help but ask. Nobody knows what's there or what that place even is. The storyteller shook his head. However, one thing is certain. That was the final battlefield of the Primordial War. The Primordial War. Su Zimo was shocked. The storyteller said in a deep voice, to be precise, that place was originally called Kunlun, but because of an apocalyptic battle that turned into a massive ruin, it was later known as the Kunlun Ruins. It said that in the primordial war, the taboo dragon Phoenix and Kuan Peng led 8 primordial races and countless races to attack Kunlun, fighting against the 10,000 races led by the taboo Ho. Hold on. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he suddenly asked, Senior, shouldn't it be the primordial 9 races? The storyteller shook his head. According to the records of founder Master Ling Long, there were only 8 primordial races at the start of the primordial era. The god race only appeared in the late stage of the primordial era and weren't strong enough at the time of the primordial war. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. For some unknown reason, he had a feeling that something unusual was hidden within. However, he could not figure it out at the moment. The storyteller's description of the primordial war was somewhat different from the Illumination Dragon Grand Elder. After all, that was something from the primordial era. Even for the 1,000 demon tribulation and astral tribulation that happened 20,000 to 30,000 years ago, it was difficult to know the truth, let alone a war that happened countless years ago. The only thing they were certain of was that the primordial war was indeed extremely tragic. It was much more tragic than the war between the human race and the primordial 9 races in the ancient era. Countless races were wiped out in the primordial war. Indeed, all 3 taboos died in that battle as well. Because of that, the primordial 9 races suffered immense losses. Because of that, the primordial era came to an end. Thereafter, it entered the ancient era where humans took advantage of the situation to rise and the cultivation civilization flourished, welcoming a glorious era. Finally, an ancient war against the primordial 9 races broke out. Chapter 1473 Divine Powers. Chapter 1473, Divine Powers. The voice of the storyteller continued ringing. There were way too many experts that died in the Kunlun ruins. Countless of them. Countless divine powers were released in that unprecedented battle. Even though the Kunlun mountain range was destroyed, there are still extremely terrifying divine powers remaining in the ruins that last forever. Su Zimo was secretly alarmed. In the primordial war, countless races were destroyed and the primordial 9 races suffered immense losses with all 3 taboos dead. How vast and terrifying were the remaining divine powers in the Kunlun ruins? It was completely unimaginable. The storyteller said, these terrifying divine powers form an extremely unique domain. Any Mahayana Patriarch that enters it will easily cause a divine power storm. Divine power storm. Su Zimo and Demonist Ji exchanged glances. Given their cultivation realms, it was difficult for them to imagine what sort of an existence the so-called divine power storm was. In fact, neither of them knew much about divine powers. The storyteller said in a deep voice, a Mahayana Patriarch might be able to survive if a lesser divine power storm is triggered. However, if a greater divine power storm is triggered, they'll be doomed. If it's a supreme divine power storm, even emperors would be shredded easily upon entering. Lesser and greater divine powers. Su Zimo was even more puzzled. In the ancient era when the Kunlun ruins was just formed, more than 10 Mahayana patriarchs and 2 emperors of the primordial races wanted to explore it. The storyteller said, unfortunately, all of them were annihilated. Pust. Su Zimo gasped. In that case, it was no exaggeration that the Kunlun ruins was a forbidden ground for the primordial races. Thereafter, every tens of thousands of years, there would be experts of the primordial races who were indignant and wanted to step into the Kunlun ruins. After all, there were way too many treasures left in the ruins in the primordial war. It was hard to imagine. Su Zimo nodded. In the primordial war, many races were destroyed and countless experts died. The treasures left behind by those experts became ownerless. If he could take out all the treasures in the ruins, the foundation of the 9 immortal sects, 8 demon races, 7 fiend sects and 6 Buddhist monasteries combined might not even be able to compare to it. The storyteller said, however, among the many experts of the primordial races that entered the Kunlun ruins over the years, only one of them managed to survive and was scared half to death. From then on, no primordial race dared to step foot into the ruins. What about Mahayana patriarchs of the human race? Su Zimo asked curiously. They can't enter either. The storyteller shook his head and sounded certain. Needless to say, from the ancient era till now, there were definitely countless human patriarchs who entered but failed to return alive. Demonist Ji thought for a moment and said, since Mahayana patriarchs can't enter, can Dharma characteristic Tao lords or perhaps conjoint body mighty figures enter? Yes. The storyteller nodded. Indeed, for cultivators below the Mahayana realm, they won't trigger a divine power storm upon entering. However, the Kunlun ruins is extremely treacherous with countless dangers. There were indeed cultivators beneath the Mahayana realm that ventured in to explore, and only very few of them returned alive. Furthermore, those people did not even reach the depths of the Kunlun ruins and could not hang on any longer after circling around the outer perimeter. After a moment of silence, the storyteller said, "Before Founder Master Ling Long entered the Mahayana realm, she braved immense danger to enter the Kunlun ruins for a primordial divine herb." According to the records of Founder Master Ling Long, the Kunlun ruins does not only contain treasures left behind by experts of the past, there are even countless spirit herbs and trees from the primordial era. Of course, apart from that, there are also many races that went extinct in the primordial war. Those living beings mingled and reproduced with one another in the Kunlun ruins. They adapted to the environment and became a new race. Founder Master Ling Long referred to them as the Kunlun race. Zimo gradually understood. The Kunlun race was not a new race, but a race that was fused with various major races. There might be humans, demon beasts, and even vegetation. The Kunlun ruins was like a place isolated from the outside world. The Kunlun race was the master of that world. They would not leave the Kunlun ruins and were extremely resistant towards the outside world as well. If they discovered any outsiders barging in, they would definitely not let the outsiders off. Desolate Marshal. The storyteller said in a deep voice, "The Kunlun ruins is a unique domain formed by divine powers left behind from the primordial era. Cultivate there for a long time and the killing badge within your body will definitely dissipate gradually. If you enter the Kunlun ruins, you must be careful and avoid the Kunlun race. Look for a secret and safe place at the outer perimeter of the Kunlun ruins and cultivate diligently so that you can advance to the Mahayana realm as soon as possible." Zimo nodded and bowed deeply. "Thank you for your guidance, Senior." The reason why Enigma Palace did not have much of an understanding towards the Kunlun ruins was because Founder Master Ling Long made a trip there in the past and left behind precious records. After pondering for a moment, Zimo asked again, "Senior, what were the lesser and greater divine powers that you mentioned earlier on?" The storyteller smiled gently. "You'll know about these things once you advance to the Mahayana realm. However, it doesn't hurt to let you know beforehand. Divine powers can be divided into three types, namely lesser, greater, and supreme divine powers. Naturally, the power of those divine powers increase in succession." Zimo nodded to himself and asked, "The divine power that Patriarch Blood Fortune released earlier on? The one that could reconstruct his body with a single drop of blood. What is it under?" "That's one of the lesser divine powers," the storyteller said indifferently. Zimo and Demonish G's hearts skipped a beat. Even a powerful method such as blood rebirth was merely a lesser divine power. One could only imagine how frightening the might of a greater or supreme divine power would be. The storyteller said, "There are 10,000 known lesser divine powers and thousands of greater divine powers. However, there are only dozens of known supreme divine powers. Under normal circumstances, even the combined power of more than 10 lesser divine powers won't be a match for a single greater divine power. Even 100 greater divine powers combined can't match a single supreme divine power." Although there were only 3 levels of divine powers, the difference in strength was exponential. After a brief pause, the storyteller said hesitantly, "Of course, Founder Master Ling Long once mentioned that there might perhaps be a type of divine power that was even above supreme divine powers. It's the Peerless divine powers." Peerless meant that no divine powers could compare to it. Not even supreme divine powers. Of course, Founder Master Ling Long merely heard of that as well. After all, from the primordial era till now, there had never been any peerless divine powers that appeared. The storyteller smiled. If there was truly such a divine power, even Tianhuang mainland would be turned into ruins if it was released. The saying of peerless divine powers is truly way too illusory. Chapter 1474, 3 Calamities of Daoism. Chapter 1474, 3 Calamities of Daoism. Throughout history, there have been millions of human cultivators and countless conjoint body mighty figures. However, only a rare few manage to advance to the Mahayana realm and comprehend divine powers to become a patriarch. Do you know why? The storyteller asked. Divine Power Tribulation. Su Zimo made an attempt to reply. He had once heard someone mention that in order to advance to the Mahayana realm from the conjoint body realm, one had to undergo a tribulation, the Divine Power Tribulation. Throughout history, this Divine Power Tribulation had buried countless paragons and monster incarnates. The owners of the 30-odd stone statues in the Dao Inheritance ground were all the most famous paragons and monster incarnates of Tianhuang mainland in the past. However, these people were still unable to take the final step and were stuck before the Mahayana realm, dying with regrets. The storyteller had a slightly emotional expression as he nodded. Cultivation is something that defies the heavens to begin with. In this period of time, one will experience countless dangers. These dangers either originate from their own mental demons or from the killing intent of the outside world. However, there has never been any danger that can be called a tribulation. Previously, be it in terms of breaking through from golden core, nascent soul or void reversion realm, one would encounter danger but it could not be considered as a tribulation. For something to be called a tribulation, it must mean that it was extremely difficult to survive and one would most likely die. The storyteller said slowly, the Divine Power Tribulation refers to the three calamities of Daoism: wind, fire and thunder. Su Zimo's heart stirred, it felt familiar. The storyteller smiled. Seems like you've thought of the Dao Inheritance ground as well. Su Zimo nodded. There was a three tribulations domain in the Dao Inheritance ground and there were three tribulations: the Yin Wind Tribulation, the Karmic Flame Tribulation and the Thunder Tribulation. The storyteller said, back then there were many paragons and monster incarnates who left their legacies there. Since three tribulations were created, how could they have been set casually? There was a deeper meaning to it. A look of realization flashed through Su Zimo's eyes. However, the storyteller changed the topic. The three calamities of the Divine Power Tribulation are sent down by heaven and earth and are even more terrifying than the three tribulations domain. That wind is no ordinary wind, it's the heavenly dipper wind. Sharp as an awl and lethal as a blade, it enters through the head and spreads through the 5 viscera, 6 bowels, 9 orifices, flesh and hair, destroying everything along its way. The heavenly dipper wind penetrates everything and if the essence spirit isn't refined enough, it will be dispersed as well. 1. Su Zimo and Demonist G were secretly alarmed. The fire is no ordinary fire either, it's the earth malevolent fire. Born from beneath one's feet, it surges right through their glabella. If one's body isn't strong or their bloodline isn't robust enough, their organs would turn into ashes while their limbs would rot instantly. 10,000 years of cultivation would turn into ashes completely. 1. The storyteller continued, that thunder isn't the ordinary thunder of the mortal realm either, it's the 5 elements divine thunder. The Gung metal E would Gui water, Bing fire and Wu earth divine thunders would crash upon one. Any single mistake and their soul would be dispersed. 1. If they can't pass through the three calamities, their bodies and essence spirits will be destroyed without any corpse remaining. Of course, if they manage to survive the tribulation of the three calamities, they would comprehend a divine power, blood rebirth. Su Zimo finally understood. The reason why every Mahayana patriarch knew blood rebirth was because they could comprehend that divine power through the baptism of the three calamities. Suddenly, Su Zimo recalled a doubt he had in the past and could not help but ask, Senior Mahayana patriarchs of the cultivation world rarely appear. Are they all in seclusion in the various major sects? Up till this point of his cultivation, Su Zimo had encountered too few Mahayana patriarchs, which was a little strange. It was as though all the Mahayana patriarchs were hiding in a place and would not come out unless something major happened. When something happened to Enigma Palace this time round, Patriarch Qing Cheng seemed like he returned from another place as well. The storyteller said, typically after entering the Mahayana realm, one would no longer bother about dharmic treasures or secret skills. All Mahayana patriarchs only have a single goal and that is to comprehend divine powers as much as possible. Once you advance to the Mahayana realm, if you want to raise your cultivation and combat strength, you have to comprehend divine powers. With every divine power comprehended, one's essence spirit, body and bloodline will be baptized by the power of divine powers and their combat strength will increase significantly. In the cultivation world, the best place to comprehend divine powers is not in Tianhuang mainland but... At that point, the storyteller suddenly paused and looked at Su Zimo with a fake smile, clearly testing the latter. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. From the tone of the storyteller, this was definitely a place he knew. Furthermore, there was a high chance it was a familiar place. However, why would a place he was familiar with become a place for patriarchs to comprehend divine powers? Suddenly, a thought flashed through Su Zimo's mind as he blurted, "The ancient battlefield." The ancient battlefield was a dimension of its own and was a broken world. Su Zimo had been to the elementary and intermediate ancient battlefields, but he had never heard any rumors about the advanced ancient battlefield. Now that he thought about it, the place where these patriarchs had the highest chance of comprehending divine powers was the advanced ancient battlefield. Su Zimo replied, "If I'm not wrong, the final ranking of the 3 Enigma rankings, the divine powers ranking, should also be in this advanced ancient battlefield." "That's right." A look of admiration flashed through the storyteller's eyes as he nodded slightly. There were many divine powers left behind in this final ancient battlefield. Those divine powers could be in some ruins, at some mountain peak, or among the trees and grass. Actually, there are even more divine powers remaining in the Kunlun ruins, and they're even more terrifying. However, because the primordial war was way too intense and the environment there was extremely sensitive, Mahayana patriarchs would trigger a divine power storm the moment they stepped in. They won't even be able to survive the divine power storm, let alone comprehend the divine powers. Compared to that, the environment of the ancient battlefield is relatively mild. As long as one can discover the remnant of any divine powers, they can comprehend it. Su Zimo understood. In order to increase their cultivation and combat strength, Mahayana patriarchs of the cultivation world searched and comprehended divine powers in the ancient battlefield. During this process, they would naturally not bother about the strifes of the cultivation world. After all, it was not easy to find a divine power. The process of comprehending a divine power was even harder. That was the reason why patriarchs rarely appeared and cultivators of the sect would not alarm them unless a major calamity befell the sect. Only Mahayana patriarchs can enter that ancient battlefield. Suddenly Su Zimo asked. The storyteller shook his head. That's not a hard rule. However, given your current physical body and essence spirit, you won't be able to withstand a divine power if you forcefully comprehend it. The storyteller saw through Su Zimo's intentions and knew that the latter wanted to comprehend divine powers as soon as possible and advance to the ancestor realm. However, there were no shortcuts to cultivation. The storyteller said, if you want to comprehend divine powers, your body and essence spirit have to reach a certain level. A grade 7 creation green lotus is definitely not enough. Chapter 1475, Deceive the World. Chapter 1475, Deceive the World. In other words, the old man was implying that Su Zimo's green lotus true body had to grow to grade 8 if he wanted to enter the advanced ancient battlefield. A grade 8 creation green lotus was extremely difficult to nurture, and in the ancient era, only the Buddha Emperor had it. Even if Su Zimo were to absorb the large chunk of Ashoka wood completely, it would be difficult for his green lotus true body to transform to grade 8. However, there was still a chance. The creation green lotus had already fused with his body and bloodline. As long as his cultivation increased, the green lotus true body would grow. Although the Kunlun ruins were filled with danger, there were countless treasures. Furthermore, experts of the primordial races did not dare to enter the ruins. As long as he could avoid the danger of the Kunlun ruins, he could cultivate there forever. This was a rare opportunity and cultivation ground for Su Zimo. You guys can rest here for a few days. The storyteller smiled gently. That divine power of mine can still conceal everything for a few more days. At the very least, you'll be safe in Enigma Palace during this period of time. Senior, what's the name of your divine power? Su Zimo asked curiously. Deceive the World. The storyteller said slowly, it's a supreme divine power. Ah. Su Zimo and Demonish Ji exclaimed. The two of them were fortunate enough to witness a supreme divine power personally and were both shocked and delighted. The storyteller said, there are many types of supreme divine powers and all of them focus on different aspects. Some of them focus on movement techniques while others on killing. For Deceive the World, it's the #1 method of concealing the heavenly secrets. For example, Everlasting Vitality focuses on healing, Sleeve Universe focuses on encompassing and shifting space. 4 supreme divine powers such as Incinerating Firmament Boiling Sea, 6 Paths of Reincarnation, Firmament Slash and Divine Punishment, They lean towards killing. Incinerating firmament, boiling sea. Sleeve universe. 6 paths of reincarnation. Su Zimo's gaze intensified when he heard that. He was getting closer to these legendary powers. Do you know what's the difference between Mahayana patriarchs and emperors? The storyteller asked again. What sort of patriarchs are able to become emperors? Su Zimo exchanged glances with Demoness Ji and both of them shook their heads. The comprehension of a supreme divine power. The storyteller said, one can only be conferred the title and become a true emperor upon comprehension of a supreme divine power. Su Zimo's eyes revealed a look of realization. It was no wonder why Hermit once said that even emperors were at the Mahayana realm. The reason why a patriarch was referred to as an emperor was because they had comprehended a supreme divine power. The storyteller continued, the reason why there's a difference in strength between emperors is because the focus of the supreme divine powers they comprehend is different. For example, back then, the supreme divine power comprehended by the Dharma Emperor was everlasting vitality and it was focused on healing. Eventually, he could not defeat the Ancestor Realm Illumination Dragon still. At that point, Su Zimo sighed internally. Even the storyteller did not know the truth about what happened at the bottom of the Dragon Burial Valley back then. The reason why the Dharma Emperor sacrificed his remaining lifespan to save the red-headed ghost was because he did not want a huge battle between the dragon race and the human race to repeat the massacre. Of course, if the difference is merely in the focus of the comprehended divine power, the variation in combat strength won't be too great. The storyteller said, if anyone could comprehend a second, third, or even more supreme divine powers, their combat strength would increase in folds. That's way too difficult. Demoness Ji shook her head. It was already extremely rare for someone to comprehend a single supreme divine power and become an emperor, let alone 2, 3 or more. There would always be a time when one was exhausted. Even emperors did not have that much time and energy. Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly asked, how many supreme divine powers did the eternal human emperor comprehend in the past? Demoness Ji let out a curious expression as well. 6 of them. The storyteller said slowly. Su Zimo and Demoness Ji were shocked. The storyteller said, ever since the ancient era there have been many paragons and monster incarnates. Their achievements may even surpass the human emperor. Su Zimo nodded. For people like him and the fallen Diin, their accomplishments at the Golden Core realm had already surpassed the human emperor. However, among those monster incarnates, few could become emperors. None of them could even compare to him, let alone surpass him in the end. Suddenly, Demoness Ji asked, how many supreme divine powers did Fiend Emperor Hatred comprehend in the past? 5. The storyteller said, however, given the Fiend Emperor Hatred's talent, he should have been able to comprehend a 6th one and stand shoulder to shoulder with the human emperor if he hadn't committed suicide. As for the remaining Buddha, Sword, Saber and Thunder Emperors, they merely comprehended 3 supreme divine powers. Most of the ancient emperors merely comprehended a single supreme divine power. What a stark difference. Su Zimo was secretly alarmed. Even for renowned emperors such as the Buddha and Sword Emperors, they were 2 supreme divine powers apart from Fiend Emperor Hatred. The difference between them and the human emperor was even greater. The storyteller said, therefore, without the eternal human emperor, the human race would have definitely lost the ancient war. Legend has it that in the ancient war, the human emperor overturned the entire situation single-handedly. But now, Su Zimo knew that the legend was not exaggerated at all. He thought for a moment and asked in a deep voice, what's the max number of supreme divine powers comprehended by the emperors of the human race in this generation? Probably 3. The storyteller sighed gently. Su Zimo finally understood the pessimism of the storyteller. The strength of the human race in this generation was truly way too inferior compared to the ancient era. In the ancient war, even with the human emperor, the human race merely secured a tragic victory, let alone this generation. Don't think about such things first. The storyteller looked at Su Zimo and said in a deep voice, right now, the most important thing for you is to cultivate as soon as possible and grow further. I understand. Su Zimo nodded. The storyteller left after a few more reminders and Su Zimo stayed in Enigma Palace temporarily alongside Demoness Ji. Yen Beichen's injuries gradually healed. In a few days he had mostly recovered. However, the wound in his heart could no longer be healed. His eyes were still dead without any luster. Su Zimo sighed internally. As he had expected, after Yen Beichen killed Heavenly Secrets, he lost the obsession in his heart and could no longer find any hope of surviving. Once he left, Yen Beichen would most probably commit suicide. Su Zimo wanted to console him but realized that he did not know where to start. At that moment, any consolation seemed powerless. After a long silence, Su Zimo said, "Brother Yen, have you ever considered the fact that although it's not present in Tianhuang mainland, there might be a mysterious power in the upper world that could revive fellow Daoist Qin? The reason why I'm in my current state is because of a woman from the upper world who changed my fate for me. Brother Yin, I believe that the power of the upper world can also control life and death. 1. Everyone has to have a goal to survive. My goal is to ascend to the upper world and follow in her footsteps so that I can stand shoulder to shoulder with her." At the mention of that, Su Zimo's gaze was resolute and he seemed to shine. At the side, Demoness Ji pursed her lips and her eyes dimmed momentarily at the sight of that. Everyone has to have a goal to survive. Suddenly, Yen Beichen murmured softly and his eyes flickered. Right then Lin Xuanji pushed the door open and entered. "Brother Su, you have visitors." Chapter 1476, Peerless Asura. Chapter 1476, Peerless Asura. Visitors? Su Zimo was momentarily stunned. Given how relaxed Lin Xuanji was, it was clear they were not enemies. Right now he was in an extremely dangerous situation and was hunted down by the primordial 6 races. Unless they were old friends, who would dare to look for him at a time like this? Right then 2 people appeared at the entrance. When he saw the 2 of them, Su Zimo could not help but laugh. He hurried forward and bowed to one of them with cupped fists. "Greetings, Master." That person was none other than mighty figure Extreme Fire of 100 Refinement Sect. The other person was a young lady in her prime. Her wave-shaped hair fell to her shoulders and was a little withered, but it could not conceal her peerlessly beautiful face. The girl's skin was fair and her features were exquisite without any flaws. Although she was slightly inferior to Demoness Ji in terms of bewitchment, her appearance was already comparable. Furthermore, her eyes were not ordinary black or white. Instead, they were clear and green, resembling clear water that shimmered with a unique beauty. What a beautiful little girl. She seems to have grown up a little. Even Demoness Ji could not help but exclaim when she saw the girl. "Young Master." The girl came to Su Zimo's side and called out with joy in her eyes. This girl was none other than Yen Qi, who possessed half of the god race's bloodline. Su Zimo took her in at the capital of Great Zhou and she was accepted by Ethereal Peak later on. Su Zimo swept his gaze and nodded slightly. "Not bad, you've already entered the conjoint body realm." Although Yen Qi was a remnant of the god race, her talent was frighteningly shocking. Her cultivation speed followed closely behind Su Zimo without being left behind. Although the bloodlines of remnants were impure, their accomplishments might not be inferior to others. Monk Daming and the Blood Fiend from 40,000 years ago were both remnant bloodlines. However, even pure-blooded experts of the primordial races would be suppressed by the 2 of them at the same cultivation realm. "Master, why are you guys here together?" Su Zimo asked. Extreme Fire smiled. "When I heard that you were killed by the primordial 6 races, I left 100 Refinement Sect and became a free man. I was prepared to look for you in the South region. However, before I reached the South region, I heard that a huge battle broke out at Enigma Palace. As such, I rushed here right away. Thankfully you're still here." Although Extreme Fire said it indifferently, Su Zimo's heart was moved. When the primordial 6 races set their killing badges on him, everyone wanted nothing more than to avoid him. Even Dapamkara Monastery did not dare to let him into their monastery for fear of being implicated. However, Extreme Fire came to look for him right away. Furthermore, Extreme Fire had already prepared for the worst-case scenario. He was afraid of implicating 100 Refinement Sect, and that was why he left 100 Refinement Sect in advance to regain his freedom. "Not long after I arrived here, I encountered this girl." Extreme Fire pointed at Yen Qi and continued. Su Zimo looked at Yen Qi. Yen Qi smiled. "I also heard of the news of you being hunted by the primordial 6 races, young master. I wanted to stay by your side and help you. Now that I'm already at the conjoint body realm, Master Crane agreed to let me come over." "Master and Yen Qi, you guys," sigh. Su Zimo sighed gently, but a warm feeling flowed through his heart. Up till this point of his cultivation he roamed Tianhuang mainland and made countless enemies. However, he also made many hot-blooded friends and siblings who could stick together. These people were loyal and did not leave him even though they knew he was in a dangerous place. It was the case for Extreme Fire and Yan Qi. It was the case for Yan Beichen and Demonish Ji. It was the same for Little Fatty and Shijian as well. Extreme Fire said in a deep voice, "Zimo, it's difficult for you to survive in Tianhuang mainland now that you're hunted by the primordial 6 races. However, there is a place that might offer a chance of survival." "Oh." Out of curiosity, Su Zimo asked, "Where?" Extreme Fire replied, "The place where I nearly died and obtained Night Spirit as well as the Illumination Sword formation." Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of a possibility. Extreme Fire continued, "That's the extreme west of Tianhuang mainland, the Kunlun ruins." Indeed. The Divine Ho egg was brought out by Extreme Fire from the Kunlun ruins. That was also a speculation that Su Zimo had just thought of. Extreme Fire had once told him that he was exploring a primordial ruin and nearly died. The Kunlun ruins was probably the most famous and largest primordial ruin in Tianhuang mainland. Most importantly, the Kunlun ruins was the battlefield of the primordial war. This was also closely related to Night Spirit. Ever since the battle at Heaven and Earth Valley, Night Spirit had been separated from him and his whereabouts were unknown. However, Su Zimo believed that Night Spirit would not die that easily. If Night Spirit was still alive, could he be in the Kunlun ruins? Extreme Fire said, "I've been to the primordial ruin before after all and have a slight understanding of it. If we go together we might have a higher chance of surviving." Su Zimo nodded thoughtfully. To begin with, the Kunlun ruins was a cultivation ground for him. But now that he thought about the high chance that Night Spirit was in the Kunlun ruins, a sense of anticipation grew in his heart. Right then, Yan Beichen suddenly sat up on the couch. "Brother Yan, how are you?" Su Zimo hurried forward and asked softly. At that moment Yan Beichen looked a little better. He looked at Su Zimo fixedly and asked once more, "Zimo, will the upper world truly have the power to save Pian Ran?" "I believe there is." Su Zimo nodded. In truth, the dead could not be resurrected. This involved the great Tao of reincarnation and even he could not be certain. However, at that moment he could not care less. Right then, the Storyteller appeared out of thin air in front of Yan Beichen's couch and said in a deep voice, "There are endless secrets in the world. Tianhuang mainland might just be a well. The only way you can see a wider world is if you jump out of this well. Perhaps you might be able to understand the obscurities of life and death in that world. However, if you commit suicide now, you'll never get the chance ever again." The weight of the Storyteller's words was much heavier and more trustworthy than Su Zimo's. True enough. Gradually, some life force recovered from Yan Beichen's eyes and shone brightly. Su Zimo knew that the Storyteller's words had finally reignited Yan Beichen's hope. In the past, revenge was the hope that allowed Yan Beichen to continue surviving. Now, saving Qin Pian Ran would be the hope for Yan Beichen's future. "This is the first time I'm seeing the old man persuade others personally." At the side, Lin Xuanji sent a voice transmission secretly to Su Zimo using his spirit consciousness. The Storyteller was the current mystic emperor. An emperor was willing to lower his status to persuade Yan Beichen. It was clear how highly the Storyteller regarded the latter. The Storyteller continued, "Asura, you obtained the inheritance of the Fiend Emperor hatred. However, I believe that you're not another hatred. Leave your own Tao and break free from the effect of the hatred sutra on you, putting down your obsession. I believe that even though he passed down his legacy, the Fiend Emperor hatred would not want you to become a second him. You're the Asura, the one and only peerless Asura in this world." Chapter 1477, Entering Kunlun. Chapter 1477, Entering Kunlun. Yan Beichen caressed the hatred fiend's saber beside him and murmured softly, "If I'm not hatred, would you still be willing to follow me?" Clang. Clang. The hatred fiend's saber seemed to be able to understand Yan Beichen's words and buzzed and trembled. It had already decided that Yan Beichen was its master. Be it hatred or the Asura, it would follow Yan Beichen through life and death. "All right." Yan Beichen's eyes shone brightly as he said proudly, "I, the Asura, will bring you to the upper world to take a look in this generation. I will also defy the heavens and change fate, altering life and death." With that said, he bowed deeply to the storyteller. Thank you, senior. The storyteller nodded slightly with a delighted expression. Indeed, he thought highly of Yen Beichen. In his heart, Yen Beichen's accomplishments might even be higher than Fiend Emperor Hatred's. Yen Beichen turned to Su Zimo and said in a deep voice, Zimo, I won't be accompanying you on the trip to the Kunlun ruins. You have to be careful. Don't worry, brother. Su Zimo nodded. Yen Beichen had his own Dao. If he followed Su Zimo to the Kunlun ruins, he might feel restricted instead. Now that Yen Beichen was fine, Su Zimo was completely relieved and no longer had to stay in Enigma Palace. Zimo The moment Demoness Ji spoke, Su Zimo understood her intentions. He smiled and shook his head. There's no need for that. You're the pure maiden of this generation. How can you follow me to the Kunlun ruins casually? If Pure Maiden sect finds out about this, I'll probably be hunted down by your experts. Extreme Fire nodded as well. Don't worry, with me and Nian Qi accompanying Zimo, we can look after one another. Master Nian Qi, don't follow me either. Su Zimo said deeply, the Kunlun ruins is not a good place. There's no need for you guys to accompany me in taking the risk. What are you talking about? Extreme Fire's eyes widened as he patted his storage bag. Don't get ahead of yourself, lad. I got a treasure map here. I'm heading to the Kunlun ruins for it. Young master, I'm already here. You can't chase me away. Nian Qi pursed her lips and smiled. Su Zimo did not say anything more. The three of them exchanged glances and smiled. There was no longer a need for words. Since he had already decided to leave, Su Zimo did not delay any longer. He bid farewell to Shi Jian and the others one after another and prepared to move. The storyteller said, You still have the killing badge of the Bloodvine race on you. If you leave Enigma Palace, the Bloodvine race will definitely see it. I'll tear through space and lead you guys there directly. As he said that, the storyteller swiped his palm across the void before him. As though it was cut by a sharp blade, a gigantic crack appeared in the void. It was dark and deep within, and wind gusted. With a flick of his sleeves, the storyteller swept Su Zimo, Extreme Fire and Nian Qi up and leaped into the crack. Old man, bring me along. I'll take a look as well. Just as the crack was about to close, Lin Xuanji shouted and tugged at the old storyteller's sleeves, jumping in as well. The world spun. It was a similar sensation as using a major transference talisman. Everything before them was completely dark and even breathing was difficult. In just a few breaths' time, Su Zimo and the rest felt their bodies lighten and their eyes lit up. They were finally seeing light once more. Although they were on the ground, everyone felt a heavy and repressing feeling in their hearts. Everyone looked over instinctively and could not help but freeze on the spot in shock. In front of everyone were mountain ranges that rose and fell continuously. Some of the mountain ranges were sliced into two as though they had suffered a violent collision. Some of the mountain ranges were mostly destroyed. The vast plains of the mountain ranges were strewn with corpses and bones. It was a shocking sight. Some of the corpses were not rotten and retained their original forms. Their bodies were long and more than 10,000 feet long, looking like coiled divine dragons. It was a dragon skeleton. A divine dragon that was more than 10,000 feet long meant that this was a true ancestor realm divine dragon. At the edge of the Kunlun ruins, everyone caught sight of the corpse of an ancestor realm divine dragon. It was truly hard to imagine how tragic the primordial war was back then. Everyone looked around. There were not only corpses of the dragon race among the bones, there were also corpses of other primordial races as well as countless unknown living beings that filled the entire mountain ranges. The scene was way too shocking. The aura emitted by the ruins was way too repressing and sinister. If one's Dao heart was not steady, they could break down mentally in such an environment. Extreme Fire looked at the scene before him and sighed gently, as though he recalled something. Back then, more than 10 of us came to explore this treasure trove. To think that I was the only one who survived. One of them had his Dao heart broken not long after he entered the Kunlun ruins. After a brief pause, he sighed once more. Actually, I would have died long ago as well if I hadn't met Zimo. Everything that I've experienced over the years is truly tragic in retrospect. The storyteller looked at the ruins and remained silent for a long time before saying slowly, Zimo, cultivate well in the Kunlun ruins. You don't have to worry about Tianhuang mainland. I'll do my best to deal with the primordial races and buy time for you. Su Zimo nodded. He did not know if he would survive this trip to the Kunlun ruins, and his future was uncertain. Even he did not know if he could return alive and when he could return to Tianhuang mainland once more. Senior, take care as well. Su Zimo bowed deeply to the storyteller. Brother Su, I'll wait for you to return. Even the cynical Lin Xuanji felt a sense of reluctance at the imminent departure. Su Zimo waved his hand and entered the Kunlun ruins with Extreme Fire and Yan Qi. The three of them walked extremely slowly and surveyed their surroundings with their spirit consciousnesses tensely, afraid that something might happen. The storyteller watched the three of them from outside the Kunlun ruins the entire time and only snapped out of his stupor after their figures vanished. Old man, why have you suddenly become so emotional? Lin Xuanji asked with a frown. He knew the storyteller too well. He could sense the pessimism in the storyteller's heart. Given Brother Su's talent, with the Dragon Phoenix true body and Green Lotus true body, the primordial races won't be his match if he grows further. Lin Xuanji was optimistic on the other hand. The storyteller shook his head gently. I'm afraid there's not much time left. If we wait another 10,000 years, I believe that Desolate Marshal will definitely be able to reach the peak and become an existence comparable to the human emperor. However, the conflicts between the primordial races and the cultivation world are increasing and their movements are becoming more frequent. The final battle is about to arrive. Lin Xuanji's heart skipped a beat as he asked, Old man, how long more do you think that will be based on your divination? No more than 100 years at most. The storyteller's voice was heavy. 100 years. Lin Xuanji finally understood why the storyteller was so pessimistic. 100 years was way too short. For cultivators, 100 years was a fleeting duration. It was already not bad if Su Zimo could advance a single minor realm, let alone advance to the Mahayana realm. On the other hand, even if Desolate Marshal was at the Mahayana realm, how could he fight against the experts and emperors of the primordial races? The storyteller murmured softly, We'll do our best and leave it up to fate. Chapter 1478, Malevolent Spirit Fruit. Chapter 1478, Malevolent Spirit Fruit. Kunlun Ruins. The more Su Zimo and the other two advanced, the more alarmed they became and the surrounding environment turned increasingly sinister and spooky. The ruins of the Great Qian Empire were already filled with a rich malevolent aura after 10,000 years. Coupled with the lingering souls, many malevolent ghosts were born. However, compared to the Kunlun ruins, the Great Qian ruins was like a firefly against a bright moon, a drop of water against an ocean. It was a world of a difference. The malevolent aura was so strong that Su Zimo and the other two felt uncomfortable. It was not surprising for any vengeful ghost to be born from such a rich malevolent qi throughout history. The blood qi of Su Zimo and the other two was strong and their dermic powers rumbled furiously. Most ghosts and fiends knew that they were strong and did not dare to approach them. However, as they ventured deeper into the Kunlun ruins, a phantom would flash before their eyes from time to time. The blood qi in their bodies was also a great tonic for them. Suddenly, the malevolent aura in front of them surged and swiftly formed a black fog that floated towards the three of them. It wanted to devour them completely. Humph! Extreme Fire harumphed coldly. How dare a mere ghost try and come out to harm others in broad daylight? Before his sentence was finished, he conjured a dermic art and tapped forward. A scarlet flame burst forth and entered the swiveling malevolent black fog instantly. The power of thunder and fire was a strong counter to such sinister objects. Furthermore, Extreme Fire's flare was created from the Scarlet Flame Heart Sutra and most conjoint body mighty figures could not withstand it. However, the flare merely caused the black fog to pause for a brief moment without causing any ripples. The black fog continued surging towards the three of them. Hee hee hee. A shuddering laughter sounded from the black fog. There's no daylight in these ruins. It's always dark here. Swoosh. Right after the voice sounded, an incomparably gigantic skull suddenly appeared from the black fog. The holes in its eyes shone with a bloodthirsty glint as it opened its mouth and devoured the three of them. You must have a death wish. The dermic art in Extreme Fire's hands changed once more and three balls of flames appeared, condensing into Samadhi Dao fire that shot over. The power of the Samadhi Dao fire was more than twice that of the previous flames. The moment the Samadhi Dao fire entered the skull's mouth, it burst into flames and the black fog surrounding the skull was burned into nothingness. Roar! The skull let out an extremely painful roar. However, no matter how it channeled the malevolent chi, it could not extinguish the Samadhi Dao fire on its body. In just a few breaths, the bones of the skulls crackled from the heat and cracks appeared. If you dare to step into the Kunlun ruins, don't even think about getting out alive. The skull said fiercely, the flames here will definitely attract even more vengeful spirits and malevolent ghosts. Just wait to be devoured. Before its words were finished, the skull exploded and scattered onto the ground, turning into ashes. Extreme Fire sighed gently. Back when our group arrived here, more than half of us were killed by these vengeful spirits and malevolent ghosts. In the end, there were only 3 of us left when we entered the treasure ground. After that, the 3 of them were even more careful and continued forward. Before long, Nian Qi's gaze shifted to a black fruit and her eyes lit up. The fruit was the size of an infant's fist and was black on the outside. However, it shone brightly inside like a large and exquisite bunch of grapes. It's a malevolent spirit fruit. Extreme Fire exclaimed softly. When he saw Su Zimo's confusion, Extreme Fire explained, malevolent spirit fruits are extremely rare and can only be born after countless years in a place with rich malevolent aura. For most cultivators, the malevolent spirit fruit is a poisonous fruit and they will definitely die if they consume it. However, once they advance to the Mahayana realm and experience the malevolent earth fire of the 3 calamities of the divine power Tribulation, consuming the malevolent spirit fruit will produce a miraculous effect. The success rate of the Tribulation transcendence will increase by at least 30%. There was definitely no such spirit fruit in Tianhuang mainland. That was because the conditions required to nurture a malevolent spirit fruit were way too stringent that even an environment like the Great Chen ruins could not produce one. It was only possible in the Kunlun ruins. As the storyteller had said, danger and opportunities coexisted in the Kunlun ruins. Su Zimo did not say anything and merely frowned slightly, looking at the bottom of the malevolent spirit fruit in deep thought. Nian Qi had already walked forward, prepared to pluck the malevolent spirit fruit. Don't move. Watch out. Right then, 2 voices sounded at almost the same time. The first warning came from Su Zimo. The second was an unfamiliar voice. Right then, something weird happened. The ground beneath Nian Qi's feet suddenly cracked and a pair of extremely sharp cold lights flashed, slashing towards her. When Nian Qi heard Su Zimo's warning, she was long prepared as she leaped up and looked down. Bang! Boom! Boom! From the crack on the ground, a gigantic scarlet-backed centipede that was dozens of feet long slithered out and chomped down on Nian Qi, who was in midair. The cultivation of that scarlet-backed centipede was at the perfected conjoint body realm. Even among the 8 demon regions, it was a ferocious beast with terrifying combat strength. Although Nian Qi had just advanced to the conjoint body realm, half of her bloodline came from the god race. With a tender shout, she channeled her bloodline and dermic powers as a blinding sword that shone brightly appeared in her palm. Slash! Gripping her sword with both hands, Nian Qi slashed down fiercely at the scarlet-backed centipede beneath. Clang! Although the gigantic sword stood on the scarlet-backed centipede, it could not slash its way in and sparks flew instead. Scarlet-backed centipedes loved corrosion. This particular one had cultivated countless years in this ruin and by now, its shell was invulnerable against weapons, fire and water. Humph! Nian Qi did not panic and dispersed her sword, channeling her bloodline phenomenon right away. An ancient and majestic pyramid appeared in midair with countless living beings prostrating beneath it. Boom! The pyramid crushed down fiercely towards the scarlet-backed centipede. The scarlet-backed centipede lamented. Although its body was not afraid of sharpness, the pyramid carried an extremely terrifying might and crushed it into 2 with a ton of weight. Black blood splattered everywhere. The black blood in the scarlet-backed centipede's body contained poison that could kill a conjoint body mighty figure with ease. The scarlet-backed centipede opened its mouth and spat out a black poison mist. Thereafter, it swayed its upper half of its body and wanted to burrow into the ground to escape. Nian Qi possessed the bloodline of the god race and the poisonous blood could not close into her body against the surge of her blood qi. Swoosh! Her figure fell and she charged down instantly. Grabbing one of the scarlet-backed centipede's legs with her bare hands, she yanked it out of the crack in the ground. Among the primordial 9 races, the god race's physique and bloodline were at the peak and were on par with the dragon race. Although the scarlet-backed centipede was massive, it could not compare to Nian Qi in terms of strength. After pulling the scarlet-backed centipede out, Nian Qi smashed it onto the ground violently. The pyramid descended once more and crushed the scarlet-back centipede into a meat sludge. That counterattack was extremely sharp and displayed Nian Qi's immense capabilities and combat strength. Even Su Zimo nodded to himself when he saw that. Chapter 1479, Dao Attainment of the Skeleton. Chapter 1479, Dao Attainment of the Skeleton. Apart from countless malevolent ghosts, there were also some terrifying living beings in the Kunlun ruins. After killing the scarlet-back centipede, Nian Qi descended and looked in another direction. On the other side stood a white-robed man at the conjoint body realm. He was handsome and had sparkling eyes. Standing not far away, his clothes fluttered and he looked elegant. At that time, when she wanted to pluck the malevolent spirit fruit, two voices reminded her. One of them was Su Zimo and the other was this white-robed man. My gratitude, fellow Daoist. Nian Qi cupped her fists towards that person and expressed her thanks. No problem. The white-robed man smiled gently. Pardon me for being bold. By the looks of it, you guys must have just arrived at the Kunlun ruins, right? Yes. Nian Qi nodded. There was no need to hide this matter. Su Zimo and Extreme Fire did not speak and merely sized up the white-robed man. The white-robed man said, there are dangers lurking everywhere in the ruins. There must be powerful ferocious beasts guarding a treasure like the malevolent spirit fruit. There are also some ferocious beasts that guard the vicinity of certain universal treasures to wait for other living beings to fall into their traps. At that point, the white-robed man's eyes dimmed and his tone turned grim. There were initially 7 of us, but we fell into a trap of a powerful ferocious beast. I was the only one who escaped death, sigh. When he heard that, Extreme Fire reminisced about the past and felt a sense of sympathy for the white-robed man. However, he was still a little cautious as he probed, are you also here for this malevolent spirit fruit? I'm here for the malevolent spirit fruit. The white-robed man smiled and looked at Nian Qi, saying honestly, however, this malevolent spirit fruit clearly belongs to this fellow Daoist. Extreme Fire nodded slightly. Of course, in the cultivation world, humans were unpredictable. This was their first time meeting and no one could guarantee the other party's thoughts with just a few words. Fellow Daoists, I've stayed in the Kunlun ruins for a period of time. I wonder if I can travel with you guys. The white-robed man's eyes were filled with anticipation. This? Extreme Fire was hesitant. Normally speaking, the 3 of them were familiar with one another and were resistant towards strangers. However, this was the Kunlun ruins. When Extreme Fire heard about this person's encounter, he could not help but recall his past self. If he allowed this person to wander around the Kunlun ruins alone, the latter would most likely be doomed. Should we bring him along? Extreme Fire sent a voice transmission secretly, given the 3 of us, we can deal with him easily if he has any evil intentions. Nian Qi did not object and merely looked at Su Zimo. In her heart, Su Zimo would be the one to decide for such matters. Ever since the white-robed man appeared, Su Zimo had not said anything. Suddenly he asked, how should I address you, fellow Daoist? I'm Spirit Scar. The white-robed man smiled gently. Su Zimo nodded. I'm Desolate Marshal. Greetings, fellow Daoist Desolate Marshal. The white-robed man cupped his fists towards Su Zimo. Although their conversation was simple, Extreme Fire and Nian Qi's expressions changed slightly. Both of them could tell that something was amiss. The white-robed man was way too calm when he heard the name Desolate Marshal. Su Zimo's gaze was dark as he asked with a fake smile, seems like you've never heard of me, fellow Daoist? The white-robed man smiled apologetically. I'm an itinerant cultivator that cultivates in seclusion most of the time. I don't know much about the cultivation world and am inexperienced. I must be quite a joke to you, fellow Daoist. That explanation made sense. However, Extreme Fire and Nian Qi were already wary. Desolate Marshal established his Dao and imparted martial arts to all living beings, shocking the world. Even itinerant cultivators who were in seclusion all year round and were isolated from the world could not have not heard of Desolate Marshal's name. Su Zimo smiled as well and asked, how long more are you going to pretend for? The smile on the white-robed man's face did not fade and his expression turned odd. A sinister aura emanated from him as he rubbed his palms and laughed. Impressive. In all these years, there have been many cultivators who entered the Kunlun ruins, but you're the first to see through my disguise. Both Extreme Fire and Yen Qi felt their scalps tingle. Even though the white-robed man was exposed by Su Zimo, the two of them could not make out what he was still. If they had truly allowed this person to travel with them, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Actually, even Su Zimo could not see through this person's true body. However, after the white-robed man appeared, Su Zimo's spirit perception warned him repeatedly, and that was why he tested the waters. Let's see what you are. Su Zimo did not waste his breath on the white-robed man and flicked his finger. Qi. A blinding white sword Qi burst forth and arrived before the white-robed man instantly. The sharpness of the heaven-slaying sword Qi caused the white-robed man's expression to change slightly. Swash. The white-robed man swayed and disappeared before Su Zimo and the other two, shifting to the other side at an astonishing speed. Even Extreme Fire's gaze could not catch up to him. The white-robed man's figure reappeared with a gash on his cheek that was oozing with blood and a nauseating stench. Although the white-robed man dodged extremely quickly, his cheek was still sliced by the heaven-slaying sword Qi. So, a skeleton attained the Dao and even managed to grow flesh and blood. Sneering coldly, Su Zimo strode forward and closed two fingers, waving and slashing towards the white-robed man. Tiske. Tiske. Tsk. More than 10 heaven-slaying sword Qi burst forth and tore in different directions towards the white-robed man. Ah! Sensing danger, the white-robed man suddenly shrieked. The flesh on his body suddenly dissipated, turning into streams of thick malevolent Qi that condensed into malevolent spears that charged towards the heaven-slaying sword Qi. The white-robed man was left with nothing but a skeleton as he stood on the spot. The skeleton was evidently strange, as though it was pieced together from various bones. There were dragon bones, golden crow bones, and even bones of the god race. The skeleton first used the corpses in the Kunlun ruins to piece together a body of bones. After obtaining the Dao, it used malevolent Qi to condense the flesh. If the skeleton were to continue cultivating, it would be no different from a true cultivator. Clang, clang, clang. The malevolent spears released by the skeleton collided with the heaven-slaying sword Qi and were not disadvantaged. An ear-piercing sound of collision could be heard. The skeleton already had the cultivation of a half-martial ancestor. Su Zimo's gaze intensified as he strode forward and conjured hand seals with both hands, chanting Sanskrit. Om, Ma, and I, Pa, Mi, The moment the 6 words of Daming mantra were released, 6 Daming Dharmic seals descended at the same time. Dharmic arts of the Buddhist monasteries were the most lethal for the skeleton. When the Great Vajra Wheel and Great Mount Meru seals descended, the skeleton shuddered and its bones creaked as though they were about to fall apart. Su Zimo sat down and clasped his palms together. He lowered his head like an accomplished monk and recited a series of incantations with a dignified expression. The Great Light Mantra. The Auditory Release Mantra. The Sensory Enigma Mantra. The 6 Paths Diamond Mantra. All of those incantations were used to free the dead and purify their grievances. A ball of Een spirit struggled endlessly from the glabella of the skeleton. However, it gradually could not withstand the consecutive incantations and was eventually extinguished. Swoosh! The skeleton scattered to the ground, returning to dust. Chapter 1480 Kunlun Barrier. Chapter 1480, Kunlun Barrier. Although the skeleton malevolent ghost seemed like he was suppressed by Su Zimo with ease, in reality, his cultivation was top tier even in Tianhuang mainland. Neither Extreme Fire nor Yen Qi were its match. If Su Zimo did not have the support of the cultivation techniques of the Buddhist monasteries, he would have to spend a lot of effort to suppress the skeleton completely. Let's go. Be careful. Su Zimo said, and the 3 of them continued forward. The 3 of them walked through the Kunlun ruins for an entire day and encountered countless battles along the way. Thankfully they got out unharmed. The existences in the Kunlun ruins did not care what sort of paragons or monster incarnates they were. They did not know desolate martial at all. In their eyes, Su Zimo and the other 2 were nothing but fresh meat that could be consumed and be of great help to their cultivation. Even with Su Zimo's immense stamina, he was tired after battling for an entire day. Extreme Fire and Yen Qi were even more exhausted and their faces turned pale. Where are we now? Su Zimo had just killed a pure-blooded ferocious beast when he stopped in his tracks and asked. Extreme Fire panted slightly. We're still at the outer perimeter of the Kunlun ruins. The Kunlun ruins was way too huge. The three of them had walked for an entire day and were still lingering around the outer perimeter. Look over there. Extreme Fire pointed to the purple-gold light in the distance and said in a deep voice, "That's the Kunlun barrier. You only truly get to the core of the Kunlun ruins after entering that barrier. However, with the existence of the Kunlun barrier, cultivators outside can't enter at all. Over the years, some cultivators who enter the Kunlun ruins to search for opportunities have merely loitered around the outer perimeter." Su Zimo gazed at the aurora-like light in the distance thoughtfully. "Let's go take a look," he said, and led the way with Extreme Fire and Yanqi right behind. Both of them consumed elixirs while recovering their blood qi and stamina. The Kunlun barrier did not seem like it was far. However, Su Zimo and the other two walked for another 3 days before they truly arrived at the foot of the Kunlun barrier. Naturally, the journey was another massacre. All three of them were the strongest paragons of the conjoint body realm. Given Su Zimo's current cultivation, the living beings and malevolent ghosts at the outer perimeter of the Kunlun ruins were even less of a threat to him. Half-martial ancestor Qingzhe of Enigma Palace had once said that desolate martial status was already established and no one could threaten him unless a patriarch attacked. He was not exaggerating at all. Su Zimo looked at the Kunlun barrier before him. As long as he passed through this barrier, he would be able to come into contact with the true secrets of the Kunlun ruins and see another world and the legendary Kunlun race. The power of the barrier was extremely mysterious and cold. Extreme Fire led the way and attempted to cross the Kunlun barrier. The moment his body touched the barrier, it met with immense resistance. Although he pushed his bloodline to its limits, he could not cross it. After a moment of stalemate, Extreme Fire could only retreat. "I still can't do it." Extreme Fire laughed bitterly. "Back then I tried it. To think that I still can't cross it after entering the conjoint body realm. Let me try too," Su Zimo said as he walked towards the Kunlun barrier. The moment he touched the barrier, he felt a tremendous resistance as well. Su Zimo channeled his bloodline slowly and the sound of a tsunami burst forth from his body. His green lotus true body exuded a divine light and his organs shone brightly. Against the obstruction of the barrier, the green lotus true body turned transparent and transformed into the shape of a creation green lotus. Under the gazes of Extreme Fire and Yanqi, Su Zimo's figure gradually entered the Kunlun barrier and vanished. He managed to get in. Extreme Fire's eyes were widened in disbelief. "Probably." Yanqi nodded. The two of them waited silently, and not long after, Su Zimo's figure appeared once more and he walked back from the Kunlun barrier. "How is it?" Extreme Fire asked hurriedly. "I crossed it," Su Zimo said in a deep voice. "This Kunlun barrier is two-way. Not only can it prevent cultivators from entering, it's also impossible for living beings inside to come out." "No wonder," Extreme Fire murmured softly. "For so many years, there has never been a Kunlun race being in Tianhuang mainland because of this Kunlun barrier. Mahayana patriarchs could naturally pass through this barrier with their power. However, none of them dared to come for fear of triggering a divine power storm that might result in death. As for half-martial ancestor experts and conjoint body mighty figures, none of them could pass through the Kunlun barrier. The Kunlun barrier isolated the Kunlun ruins from Tianhuang mainland completely, forming two different worlds. There was a huge reason why the Kunlun ruins was so mysterious and nobody had been able to unveil it for so many years. "Let me try too." After Su Zimo and Extreme Fire tried it, Yanqi was eager as well and walked forward, heading towards the Kunlun barrier. However, the moment Yanqi touched the Kunlun barrier, a change happened. A blinding light burst forth from the Kunlun barrier. As though a gigantic rock was tossed into the middle of a lake, massive waves were created on the calm barrier. An extremely terrifying power burst forth from the Kunlun barrier and smashed towards Yanqi. That power was so terrifying that even Su Zimo's expression changed slightly. Boom. Caught off guard, Yanqi was struck in the chest by the power of the Kunlun barrier and the bones in her chest shattered instantly. The bloodline of the god race was extremely strong. However, Yanqi's body was almost torn apart by the impact of the Kunlun barrier. Everything had happened too quickly. Even Su Zimo was unprepared and could not react in time. Yanqi fell out with a pale expression and spat out a huge mouthful of blood. Her organs were ruptured. Swoosh. As though it was sentient, the Kunlun barrier gathered its strength once more upon realizing that Nian Qi was not dead. A gigantic, menacing claw appeared in midair and grabbed towards Nian Qi. MMM? Frowning slightly, Su Zimo's figure flashed and he grabbed Nian Qi. Turning into a golden streak of light, he retreated rapidly and fled far from the Kunlun barrier. As the distance between them increased, the menacing claw could not hold on any longer and dissipated gradually. The Kunlun barrier returned to normal once more, as though everything that happened earlier was an illusion. How could this be? Extreme Fire chased over with a bewildered expression. Both Su Zimo and he merely encountered resistance when they tried to cross the Kunlun barrier. However, Nian Qi nearly lost her life. Su Zimo fed Nian Qi an elixir before asking with a frown, "Who set up this barrier?" "I'm not sure." Extreme Fire shook his head. Even Enigma Palace might not know the origin of that Kunlun barrier, let alone him. Su Zimo's gaze flickered. Recalling that menacing claw earlier on, he had a vague guess. He was extremely familiar with that claw. That was the claw that Night Spirit would only reveal when he reverted to his true form. If this Kunlun barrier had existed for countless years, it meant that there was a high chance it was set up by the Ho of the primordial era. If that was the case, new doubts would arise. What was the use of that barrier? Why was there such a huge reaction when Nian Qi tried to cross the Kunlun barrier? A killing intent from it was triggered. This could not be a coincidence. It must be some sort of will left behind by the primordial Ho that caused such a change to the Kunlun barrier. Chapter 1481 Secret Ground. Chapter 1481, Secret Ground. What should we do now? Extreme Fire asked. Su Zimo said deeply, "This can't continue. We've got to find a safe and quiet place to cultivate for a few days in peace." They roamed the Kunlun ruins and fought the entire time. Although they had accumulated quite a bit of comprehension, there was no end to it. They did not have the opportunity or time to consolidate those comprehensions either. Furthermore, Nian Qi was severely injured right now and could not move much. Even with her god race bloodline and immense regeneration capabilities, it would take at least half a month of recuperation for her injuries to heal. "I do know of a place where malevolent ghosts won't barge in," Extreme Fire said in a deep voice, "the secret ground I entered 5,000 years ago. I obtained Night Spirit and the Illumination Sword formation from that secret ground. Alright, let's head there and recuperate for a period of time." Su Zimo made up his mind. Firstly, Nian Qi could recuperate in peace. Secondly, they had gained quite a bit of comprehension during the past few days of the battle. If they were to seize the opportunity to cultivate and settle down, their cultivation and combat strength would increase significantly. For Su Zimo, he could also make use of this opportunity to refine the large chunk of Ashoka wood in his storage bag. At that time, the three of them would have a breakthrough in their combat strength and it would be safer for them to explore the Kunlun ruins once more. Extreme Fire took out a map from his storage bag and matched it. "That's not far from here. Follow me," he said and led the way. Su Zimo carried Nian Qi on his back and followed closely behind. Every step in the Kunlun ruins was treacherous. The three of them did not move fast and another half a day passed before they arrived at their destination. Before them was a towering mountain peak. The mountain peak was filled with strange rocks and barren land without any signs of life. Extreme Fire brought the two of them into a cave at the foot of the mountain. There were countless karst holes in the cave and one could not identify the direction at first glance. "Follow me closely. Don't get lost." Extreme Fire reminded and followed the map in his hands closely into a karst hole. There were many fork roads in this cave. Extreme Fire often changed directions and walked towards one of the forked roads. From time to time, it would head left and head right without any pattern. A long time later, Extreme Fire stopped in his tracks. Su Zimo looked over. Before them was another extremely long tunnel with no end in sight. Within it, there were many corpses strewn all over the ground with weapons scattered all over. Su Zimo swept his gaze. Through the dermic weapons on the ground, he could deduce that most of the corpses belonged to the Dharma characteristic realm and some of them were conjoint body mighty figures or even half-martial ancestor experts. The experts had died for a long time and their bodies were covered in dust. Even for the conjoint body mighty figures and half-martial ancestor experts with their indestructible bodies, they were left with nothing but empty bones and clothes. Some of the corpses were humanoid, some were ferocious beasts and demons, there were all sorts. However, Every single corpse had a purple gold ribbon tied around them. Kunlun race. Su Zimo murmured softly. He had a vague guess, but he did not dare to confirm it. The passage and the extremely complicated karst hole outside were clearly man-made. If one did not know the way, they would not be able to enter or leave. He wondered who the owner of this secret ground was. What was the motive for it? He did not know what happened back then to cause so many people to die here. Master, this is where you got poisoned back then? Su Zimo asked. After he entered, he had already released his spirit consciousness and scanned his surroundings. However, he could not discover any other living beings or danger. Extreme Fire nodded and looked at the storage bag beside one of the corpses, sighing. Back when I came here and saw so many treasures on the ground, I was naturally tempted. One could imagine how Extreme Fire, who was still a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord back then, was naturally emotional when he saw so many dharmic weapons and storage bags left behind by mighty figures. He pointed at the corpse. When I saw that there was no danger around, I went forward and wanted to open this storage bag to take a look. To think that the moment this storage bag opened, a goo worm ran out and bit me. That single attack nearly buried me here. Su Zimo's gaze shifted, and not far away, he discovered the corpse of a goo worm. Without the need for Extreme Fire to take revenge, the goo worm had already died a long time ago without its master's care. Extreme Fire reminisced with a sense of trepidation. At that time, I felt my head spin and crushed the transference talisman in my hands without hesitation. At the same time, I waved my sleeves and collected the items that fell out of the storage bag. Thereafter, I fell into the spatial tunnel and was teleported to the Tsang Lang mountain range of the north region. Later on, Extreme Fire used his remnant consciousness to open up a cave abode there and fought against the poison for 5,000 years before meeting Su Zimo and surviving. In hindsight, everything could only be described as a freak coincidence. Extreme Fire still felt emotional when he recalled the past. In that case, Night Spirit, the Illumination Stone and Illumination Sword formation fell from that storage bag? Su Zimo asked. No. Extreme Fire shook his head. When I opened that storage bag, there were indeed many items that fell out. There was the Illumination Stone and the Illumination Sword formation, but Night Spirit's egg wasn't there. At the mention of that, Extreme Fire seemed to be immersed in his memories and frowned. At that time, my vision was already a little blurry. I felt as though Night Spirit's egg had rolled over from the tunnel and leaped into the dimensional tear formed by the transference talisman to teleport out with me. Su Zimo's heart stirred. If Extreme Fire was not wrong, it would mean that he was not the one who brought Night Spirit out. Instead, Night Spirit was sentient and chose Extreme Fire to leave the Kunlun ruins with the latter's help. That was not impossible. Back in the depths of Baiming Town, the Kunping egg hatched in the primordial divine spring possessed intelligence not weaker than an adult and had many complicated emotions. That Kunping egg could even sense how terrifying the martial Dao prime body was. Back then, Night Spirit was only an egg. Why was it in this secret ground? Why would Night Spirit choose Extreme Fire and leave the Kunlun ruins? Su Zimo had a feeling that if he were to explore this secret ground once more, there was a high chance he would obtain the answer he wanted. Right then, Nian Qi let out a drowsy sound on Su Zimo's back. There's no need to hurry and explore this secret ground. Su Zimo said deeply, we'll cultivate here first and it won't be too late to explore this secret ground after we break through. All right. Extreme Fire nodded in agreement as well. On both sides of the passage were many secret chambers. Su Zimo and the other two arrived at the closest secret chamber and entered to cultivate in seclusion. Chapter 1482 Rakshasa Yu. Chapter 1482, Rakshasa Yu. 1. Time was non-existent in the mountains and cultivation was endless. It had been 20 years since Su Zimo entered the Kunlun ruins. In the past 20 years, there had been many changes in Tianhuang mainland as well. Apart from the dragon, Kuan and barbarian races, the movements of the primordial six races became increasingly frequent as more of them appeared on Tianhuang mainland to expand their territories. For the past 20 years, countless small sects and factions had been annexed by the primordial six races. There were even more cultivators that died. Right now, the primordial six races were still restraining themselves and had not clashed head-on with the super sections. Although there were occasional conflicts, things were left unsettled. For the past 20 years, the primordial 6 races had not relaxed at all in their search for Su Zimo. However, no matter how they searched, they could not find Su Zimo. It was as though Su Zimo had vanished from Tianhuang mainland. Chaos Essence Sect. D. Fan sat in the cave abode with a row of disciples under his charge. They had just returned from the 4 regions, 3 oceans and 1 continent of Tianhuang mainland and were travel-worn. There's still no news of Desolate Marshal? D. Fan asked with a frown. No. One of the disciples said in a deep voice, ever since Desolate Marshal appeared outside Enigma Palace, he seemed to have vanished without a trace. In fact, I suspect that Desolate Marshal might have already died. D. Fan harumphed coldly and glared at the disciple, scaring the latter so much that he shrank his neck and shuddered. Who is Desolate Marshal? D. Fan said coldly, if he was someone who would die so easily, how could he have escaped twice from my hands? The other disciples reported news one after another as well, but none of them could spot any traces of Desolate Marshal. Master. A cultivator said in a deep voice, pardon me for being blunt. From the information obtained from the battle at Enigma Palace, Desolate Marshal's Green Lotus true body has transformed completely. His combat strength is even comparable to a half-martial ancestor. If there's truly news of him, you can't be overly careless. Foo-foo. D. Fan sneered, what do you know? Initially, I wanted to make a move myself. But now that the primordial 6 races have set down their killing badges, there's no longer a need for me to do it personally. All I have to do is obtain news of Desolate Marshal as soon as possible. Once I spread them, experts of the primordial 6 races will naturally kill him. With a blade as sharp as the primordial 6 races, wouldn't it be a waste not to make use of it? A disciple pondered for a moment and his eyes darted around. Suddenly he said, Master, I have a plan that isn't gentlemanly. However, if this plan works, Desolate Marshal will definitely appear. Oh. D. Fan raised his brow slightly and asked, tell me about it. The disciple smiled gently. I heard that Desolate Marshal is extremely loyal and sentimental. He came from the North region's Ethereal Peak. If we head to Ethereal Peak, suppress their cultivators and spread the news, Desolate Marshal will definitely show up once he hears about it. D. Fan's eyes lit up as he murmured thoughtfully, we can give this method a try. North region. I can invite fellow Daoist Chenyu of Glass Palace as well as fellow Daoist Diju of Sword Sect to take a look around Ethereal Peak. At that thought, D. Fan took out a few spirit cranes from his storage bag and wrote a message, scattering the messenger cranes to the super sects such as Glass Palace and Sword Sect. North region. This day, 2 people arrived in the vicinity of Tsonglang mountain range. The man and woman were both at the conjoint body realm. The man was tall and wore a huge hood that concealed his face completely. The woman looked no different from a human. She had a slim, curvaceous figure and her legs were exposed, slender and long. Her skin was as fair as snow and her face was extremely beautiful. Anyone who saw that face and figure would be stunned. Hey Tua, why did you mysteriously bring me here? The woman frowned slightly and asked. Her voice was extremely pleasant as well. The man named Hey Tua chuckled and said, young mistress, you don't know. The place I brought you here today has something to do with Desolate Marshal. Hey Tua's voice was hoarse and unpleasant. Oh. The woman raised her brow slightly with an interested expression. If anyone from the primordial 6 races were here, they would be able to recognize the 2 of them. Both of them were from the Rakshasa race. The man's name was Rakshasa Hey Tua. That woman was the most famous monster incarnate of the Rakshasa race in this generation, Rakshasa Yu. The Rakshasa race was extremely mysterious. The men were extremely ugly with green faces and bared fangs, resembling malevolent ghosts. However, the women were extremely beautiful. They were not inferior to the fairies of the 9 heavens. Rakshasa Yu was not only peerless among her peers in the Rakshasa race, her appearance was also unparalleled. Young mistress, look over there. Rakshasa Hey Tua pointed to a place not far away where the peach blossom trees were the most lush. There's a town there called Pingyang Town. I see it. Rakshasa Yu nodded and sensed with her eyes closed. There's nothing special about this town. It's just a group of humans with slightly longer lifespans. Oh, there's also a peach blossom tree that gained sentience and became a demon. However, that's nothing much as well. In the blink of an eye, Rakshasa Yu scanned Pingyang town from head to toe. Young mistress, you don't understand. Rakshasa Yu said smugly, I've already investigated. Pingyang town was the place of desolate Martial's rise. I heard that this was the town where he obtained the Dao and appeared out of thin air. So? Rakshasa Yu was indifferent. Desolate Martial's old friends of the past have already passed away. What has Pingyang town got to do with him? Young mistress, I heard that Desolate Martial is extremely sentimental and has returned to Pingyang town countless times. Rakshasa Yu said, this town is preserved so well despite the chaotic era right now. Desolate Martial must have played a huge role in that fact. Since we can't find Desolate Martial, why don't we eat everyone in this town? We can vent our hatred as well. Rakshasa Yu's tone turned excited at the mention of eating people. Beneath the dark hood, a grisly red tongue stuck out and licked its lips. Rakshasa Yu frowned slightly in resistance. They're just mortals, what's there to eat? Young mistress, why have you become so benevolent? Rakshasa Yu asked. If I really want to eat, I'll eat some experts of the human race. What's the use of eating these mortals? Rakshasa Yu sneered. So what? Rakshasa Yu pouted. Since we're already here, we can't return empty-handed. We've got to fill our stomachs no matter what. Young mistress, don't worry. I'll definitely leave that conjoint body peach blossom tree demon for you. Just as the two of them were chatting in Songlang Mountain Range, two divine lights lit up in a dark room in the Su family's residence in Pingyang town. A purple-robed cultivator floated down from the couch with a burning gaze. Smiling gently, he murmured, to think that you would harbor designs on Pingyang town. 1. Chapter 1483, Who were you calling an ant? Chapter 1483, Who were you calling an ant? Su residence. The door to the room opened. A tender and naive boy walked in. When he saw the martial Dao prime body, he pouted his lips slightly. Young master, two people have arrived over there. The aura they exude is extremely annoying. Tao Yao had gained sentience through Daiyu and his cultivation speed was extremely fast. Right now he was already at the conjoint body realm. The cultivation of the martial Dao prime body was at the perfected Dharma characteristic realm. 1. That cultivation speed was already rather terrifying. 20 years ago, when he headed to the south region, he had only just entered the Dharma characteristic realm. Young master, continue cultivating. I'll chase those two away. Tao Yao raised his fist. Come back. The martial Dao prime body shook his head gently. You're not their match. Ah. Tao Yao was slightly stunned. Actually, Tao Yao was extremely strong. Back when he was at the Dharma characteristic realm, he could even suppress Monkey, the spirit tiger and the others. However, Tao Yao had a pure heart. Up till this point of his cultivation, he had never killed or injured any living being. He did not wish to kill either. That was Tao Yao's conviction. He did not like the fighting and killing of the cultivation world. What he yearned for the most was the peaceful life in Pingyang town. However, the two people who came today were definitely not kind souls. The Rakshasa race was the most violent and bloodthirsty. If it was just a spar, Tao Yao might be able to defeat the two of them. However, if it was a life and death battle, Tao Yao would definitely die. Young master, what should we do then? Tao Yao turned nervous. No worries. The martial Dao prime body smiled gently. I'll take care of it. Help me brew a pot of tea. All right. Tao Yao agreed crisply and turned to prepare tea. The martial Dao prime body arrived in the courtyard and sat on a stone stool, waiting for the intruders to arrive. Pingyang town. Rakshasa Yu and Rakshasa Yu were extremely fast and arrived above Pingyang town before long. The two of them stood in the air and attracted countless gazes the moment they appeared. Pingyang town seemed to have gone silent instantly. However, in the blink of an eye, the pedestrians on the streets continued forward. The crowd was bustling with activity. The mortals that saw them merely looked surprised but did not have much of a reaction. The clamor and bustle of Pingyang town returned before long. Rakshasa Yu's expression darkened. That feeling made him extremely displeased. As a Rakshasa of the primordial races, even human cultivators were nothing but food for him. In their expedition this time round, they encountered many cultivators. All the cultivators were scared out of their wits by the two of them. However, the mortals before them dared to ignore them. Rakshasa Yu felt as though he had been severely humiliated. With a cold sneer, he suddenly removed his hood, revealing an extremely ugly and menacing face. He had a green face with bared fangs and his nose faced the skies like a malevolent ghost from hell. There were sharp nails on his fingers and toes. That was not all. Shing. Rakshasa Yu broke free of his black robes and revealed his complete form. A pair of pitch-black meat wings grew from his back with sharp spikes that shone coldly. He flapped his massive meat wings and emanated a sinister and bloody killing intent. As he surveyed the many mortals of Pingyang town, he stuck out his grisly red tongue and smacked his lips. Ah. True enough. A commotion broke out in the crowd. Many women exclaimed in shock when they saw such a monster. Some of them even fled home and closed their doors. Some of the children were even bawling in fear. In a courtyard, a child around 5 or 6 years old threw himself into the arms of an old man who was sitting on a bench and basking in the sun, not daring to look up. When Rakshasa Yu saw that, he felt slightly better and his eyes shone with excitement. His favorite thing was to see those ants panic, fear and shout in front of him. Child, don't be afraid. The old man was extremely calm and smiled as he patted the child on the back, comforting the latter. These are just some reckless little monsters. It's nothing much. What? Rakshasa Yu was stunned for a moment. Up till this point of his cultivation, this was the first time he had heard someone describe the Rakshasa race as little monsters. Furthermore, to his surprise, even after he revealed his true form, Pingyang town was not in a complete mess. After a slight commotion, everything gradually returned to normal. Nobody cared about him at all. Actually, Pingyang town had experienced countless storms over the years. However, it was always safe and sound under the protection of Tao Yao and the martial Dao Prime body. It was especially so for the older generation of Pingyang town. They were no longer surprised by such things. In their hearts, these fiend demons could not cause any trouble in Pingyang town with second young master Su around. Ants like you don't know what's good for you. Rakshasa Yu glared at the old man in the courtyard with widened eyes and opened his mouth, wanting to devour both of them. Suddenly, at the side, Rakshasa Yu frowned and said, "Something's not right." "What's wrong?" Rakshasa Yu asked instinctively. Rakshasa Yu pointed to an unassuming courtyard in Pingyang town and said sternly, "There's a person in there. It's a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord." Rakshasa Yu swept his gaze across. In the courtyard, a purple-robed cultivator sat facing them and sipped tea leisurely with an indifferent expression. Behind the purple-robed cultivator stood a pink and tender boy who looked very obedient. It was the peach blossom tree demon they had discovered. That person looks familiar. Rakshasa Yu looked at the side profile of the purple-robed cultivator but could not remember where she saw him from. He's only at the Dharma characteristic realm. What's wrong? Rakshasa Yu frowned. Young mistress, aren't you making a fuss out of nothing? Rakshasa Yu continued frowning. However, when my spirit consciousness searched Pingyang town earlier on, I did not discover that person's existence. In other words, that person can hide from my spirit consciousness detection. Haha. Rakshasa Yu roared in laughter. Young mistress, you're thinking too much. It's just a Dharma characteristic Dao Lord. Even if Desolate Marshal is here, so what? Young mistress, watch me attack and suppress that ant. In a flash, Rakshasa Yu arrived in the skies above the residence right away. Rakshasa Yu was puzzled and followed closely behind. Right then, the purple-robed cultivator in the courtyard turned around and looked at Rakshasa Yu in midair, asking indifferently, "Who were you calling an ant?" "You." Rakshasa Yu's pupils constricted when she caught sight of the purple-robed cultivator's face. That person's face was identical to the drawing of the person she had seen in the Rakshasa race. However, the person in the drawing had green robes and black hair. As for this person, he wore purple robes and exuded an indescribable might and weight. Even she felt shudders. Desolate Marshal? Rakshasa Yu exclaimed with disbelief in her beautiful eyes. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.